This is Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Paterson and Michael Remis.
Hey, what's up, gang? Welcome to another edition of Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. All-Star break in effect for the Winnipeg Jets. A couple more games on the docket tonight in the NHL this evening before all eyes on South Florida for All-Star festivities this weekend. With the Jets off, we'll look back at the first 52 games of the season and a little bit of just past mid-season report cards, if you will, with Scott Billeck from the Winnipeg Sun. We'll also check in on the Manitoba Moose with the voice of the Moose, Dan Fink, on the road after the Moose lost a shootout decision last night in Rockford. And a little later on, we'll talk football, Super Bowl, the championship games on the weekend, and of course, the big news today, the retirement of Tom Brady with Davis Sanchez of TSN. Very fun conversation coming up a little later on. And of course, well, Tom Brady being the biggest news in all of sports. We'll get to that in just a second. Hey, everybody watching on YouTube, great to have you with us. Make sure to hit that thumbs up button. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, hit that red button. And if you're not able to catch us live between 1 and 3 p.m. every Monday to Friday, it'll be fresh in your inbox the next time you fire up YouTube. And, of course, podcast listeners, check out the YouTube as well and give a sub there. And for those of you that are YouTube listeners, if you can't make it to the video portion of it, it's always there for you at your favorite podcast feed. Search Winnipeg Sports Talk and press subscribe. Huge thanks to the sponsors that make this show happen each and every day as we get going. Our friends at Coolbet Canada, Princess Auto, Little Brown Jug, Canadian Club, Culligan Water, Vita Health Fresh Market, Wallace & Wallace, Consolidated Supply, F Apparel, Manitoba Battery, the Nick and Nicky DQ Group, Boston Pizza, Royal Sports, and the Why Not question of the day, always brought to you by Not AutoCorp. Michael Remis, how are you?
I'm feeling good, Huss. Trying to figure out what to do with my time here. I have some free evenings for a while now, with no Jets hockey. So we'll figure it out. I'm sure. I'll figure something out what to do. But we did have 3 games yesterday, and yeah. But I guess we're just counting down to the All-Star game.
Yeah, I mean, that'll be fun. We'll probably do a little bit on the All-Star game coming up, maybe on Friday heading into the weekend. I did see on Instagram, pretty sweet private jet taking Connor Hellebuck and Josh Morrissey down to South Florida yesterday to participate in the festivities and represent the Winnipeg Jets. We'll have more on that as we get into the weekend. Of course, the rest of the Jets, as we talked about yesterday, hitting the road. And I would say probably to a man going to warmer climates for the next little while after a much-deserved break after 52 games of the season, ending with that thrilling comeback on the back of Josh Morrissey himself Monday night against the St. Louis Blues. As I said, we'll have more Jets talk, maybe look ahead to the trade deadline with Scott Billeck. Some interesting lists coming out, which we'll talk about. But, Remo, we got to talk right off the bat about the big news this morning. Very rarely do you get news of the level that Tom Brady announced today directly from the player before hearing it anywhere else. And I got up this morning, fired up the gram, and the first thing I saw was Tom Brady. And, of course, my initial reaction was, oh, God, what's Tom talking about now? And then we heard a very brief, contrite Tom Brady announcing his retirement. And I got to say, it was not what I expected to be talking about today. I'm still somewhat surprised, considering the way things went last year in Tampa, that this is the way Tom Brady is going out. But as we'll play in a minute, it sounds like the GOAT is done.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a rough season for him on the field with the Bucks. I mean, they got into the playoffs, but if they're in any other division, Huss, probably not making it. And personally, we know he went through the divorce, also losing a ton of money in FTX and that crash. So a tough one for him. He has also, got this contract with Fox waiting for him when he retires. Like, why would you want to stand in the pocket and get your brains bashed in when you can go sit in the booth and get paid millions to watch football? So I think he's been doing it I'm trying to think like how old I was, how much my life has changed since Tom Brady been in the league, won his first Super Bowl. He got married, kids, getting way older, and he's still, doing his thing, the best in the league. But this year he definitely took a step back from last season where he was still one of the best in the league. And he came out today with the Twitter announcement.
Yeah, if you can, let's get that up. I mean, it's pretty brief for folks if you haven't seen it. This was not done through an agent. It wasn't done through the Buccaneers. It wasn't done through the TB12 company or foundation. This was basically Tom Brady getting up in the morning, walking outside, pulling out his phone, and making a relatively brief statement that he was done. Certainly there was a lot more pomp and circumstance last year, the big essay, all of that, which lasted all of, 41 days before he was back. He's been through a lot. Obviously, the divorce, I think, is a big part of everything happening with Tom Brady off the field. But frankly, that's part of the reason why I really thought that he would be back next year, not wanting to go out the way he did with a very down season for he and his club, not to mention some pretty juicy options that, I don't know, we'll talk about this with Davis Sanchez earlier. I mean, I really thought that San Francisco now, with the injury to Brock Purdy being out for 6 months, the uncertainty about Trey Lance, the roster that team has going into next season, might have been a perfect spot for Tom to finish up, particularly being a Northern California kid. But that wasn't the case. Here is what Tom Brady had to say, released early this morning on his social media channels.
Good morning, guys. I'll get to the point right away. I'm retiring for good. I know the process was a pretty big deal last time, so when I woke up this morning, I figured I'd just press record and let you guys know first. So I won't be long-winded. Like, you only get one super emotional retirement essay, and I used mine up last year. So really thank you guys so much, to every single one of you, for supporting me, my family, my friends, my teammates, my competitors. I could go on forever. There's too many. Thank you guys for allowing me to live my absolute dream. I wouldn't change a thing. Love you all.
All right, so there was what Tom Brady had to say this morning announcing his retirement. And you could tell, even as brief as the message was, very emotional for a guy that has basically been all about football 24/7, 365. And obviously he's got a family, he's been married, and now divorced. But he is the epitome of greatness in the National Football League. And Remo, I would put Brady's career up against, I was asked this on, was it Sportsnet this morning? I did a couple hits on some other stations about Brady, comparing him to Gretzky, comparing him to Michael Jordan. And honestly, if you're looking at his career, I think Brady's at the top of the mountain. The championships that he's won, 20 years with the New England Patriots as an unquestioned dynasty for a good portion of that. And then going to Tampa and winning another Super Bowl. The bar has been set so high by Tom, but we also knew what a competitor he was. And he'd said clearly he wasn't planning on retiring. It'll be interesting to see what led to this announcement today, the timing of it, and why he felt it was the right time. All I know is that, and listen, longtime listeners know, not a Brady guy, love to hate, but I'm very similar to growing up in Winnipeg in the 80s and getting our butts kicked by the Edmonton Oilers all those years. I was not a Gretzky guy, but you had to respect the greatness that, we saw each and every Sunday when, Brady was out on the field. And, despite what it did to our team here in Winnipeg, what Gretzky and that Oiler dynasty was able to do. And I really did think that he still had a little bit in him. I thought the competitor in him would bring him back. But it's pretty clear that getting away from the game for a few weeks, probably watching what happened on the weekend with where the game is at right now, decided that it was time to go. And as he said, there was only 1 year for the big, long essay and all the hoopla about it. And very quickly and quietly, the best to ever do it, announcing today that this time it's for real, and he's done. I am too. It's just insane.
His Pro Football Reference profile, just the number of years per season. Year 2000, you played one game, but really became the starter after the Drew Bledsoe injury 2001, leading them to the Super Bowl. He had MVPs, passing leader, the number of all-time records he has. What an incredible career, and still can't believe you think about, what they always have the meme. It's like, okay, this is what the video game graphic was in Madden when he came into the league, and this is Madden now. And again, just been so long in the league, 23 years. Incredible. What a career.
Let's just go down some of these career highlights. It all starts with the championships, and no one's got a bigger jewelry box than Tom Brady for what they did in the National Football League. 7-time Super Bowl champion, 5-time Super Bowl MVP, 3-time NFL most valuable player. The list of records that he has goes on forever. I mean, we could talk about the completions, the passing yards. So here we are. 89,214 career passing yards. 649 career passing touchdowns. 7,753 completions. 12,050 attempts. And certainly outside of the championships, the record I think that means the most to Tom Brady is the most career quarterback wins at 251, and that doesn't even start to talk about his playoff wins, which is unparalleled in NFL history. He's a polarizing figure to some. Many agree, myself included, that he's had the best career ever. Now, some will say that, his everything that he's done will never be touched. I'm not sure about that. We got a guy in Kansas City that's had the best start to a career ever. But the thing about Brady is that he did it for over 20 years at an incredibly high level. I mean, the fact that he was winning a Super Bowl with a new team after his 40th birthday, Reem, is just truly incredible. So at a certain point, I mean, even if you've been on the other side too many times, and I'm sure so many of his opponents will say the same thing, you have to sit back, tip your cap, and say that he is the best to have ever done it.
Oh, yeah. At quarterback, the longevity, the numbers, level of greatness. I mean, that even though they didn't win the Super Bowl, that 2007 season where he was MVP, absolutely incredible when he had, Randy Moss as receiver. And it's amazing how he kind of had like 3 peaks. You had the 3 Super Bowls in the first 10 years. The second 10 years, you had the 3 again with New England. And then the last one where the defense in Tampa really helped them. I mean, what a career. So many great moments, rivalries with Peyton Manning, Pat Mahomes. I mean, just, amazing. And here we are doing this again. We kind of did this last year when Adam Schefter broke the news, but now it's Tom putting out the tweet on his own today.
Yeah, he didn't get Scheftered or any of the insiders busting out his the news before he did, and I respect the way that he did it. And I think what really came out of that was the emotion behind this decision. And again, I'm not sure why it was right now, why he felt he had to do it, but it does seem like this is the time. Although, okay, here's the question though. What is the percentage level that you rate that this is actually 100%, that it is done? I mean, what chance do you give him of actually changing his mind again and coming back?
5-10%. That seems like he's pretty. I mean, you saw last season, like 2 years ago, or after the 2021 season. I mean, he was still one of the best in the league, led the league in passing yards, passing touchdowns. He was pretty awesome. Now, last year their team took a step back. They had injuries to the receivers, offensive line. What was that game in San Francisco? Like, he didn't have any time to throw. I don't know. Would a team want to take a chance on a 40, only on 46-year-old Tom Brady? I think at a certain time you got to be like, you know what? I've done all I can do. I don't need to risk my health continuing to do this.
But
anymore.
I mean, he didn't have to do that for the last 10 years.
Also,
like 10 years. I mean,
that's
to be
also
honest.
true.
I mean, the guy couldn't quit football. And again, I don't want to get into his personal life, but many people reported that decision to come back essentially ended his marriage to Gisele Bündchen, which I'm sure has weighed on him. The one thing, though, Remo, and especially considering the timing of this, just 3 days removed from the NFC Championship game, where the 49ers had Brock Purdy get injured, and he's got the torn UCL. He's going to be out for 6 months. Questions about his availability next year. I mean, he's a guy that grew up in the Bay Area. I couldn't imagine a more perfect situation if he did want to play another year to go to San Francisco to play with McCaffrey and Kittle and Debo and arguably the best defense in football for a chance to win again. And again, I guess things can change, but it really did seem like he has put he's made his decision. And I say that because of as much of the emotion that he had going forward. Good on Tom for doing it now. There are guys that, maybe are starved for attention. He's not one of them. He's had plenty of it throughout his career that would maybe try to make themselves the story of Super Bowl week. Aaron Rodgers, a la last year. But he got it done. This is going to be the biggest story in all of sports over the course of the next couple days. And then we'll get back to the two teams that are playing for the Lombardi and the Kansas City Chiefs and the Philadelphia Eagles next year in Glendale. So that's a big story. Again, we'll talk a little bit more about this with Ches later on today. Davis Sanchez is going to join us in the final guest segment after we kick around the Jet season with Scott Billeck, as well as talk a little bit of Moose with the Fink, Dan Fink, coming up in a few minutes. One story, Reem, and this is interesting, and I've seen some people that have mentioned this already in chat. The Regina Pats are playing the Calgary Hitmen tonight.
Yes.
The Saddledome is going to be sold out. They're going to be pushing 17,000 people in Calgary into that rink for a junior hockey game. And it just speaks more and more to the star power of Connor Bedard. The excitement about him going into this year's NHL draft. Truly a phenom. I mean, I think his profile only got bigger with his performance at the World Junior Hockey Championship. But I mean, to fill a 17,000 seat rink for a WHL regular season game, we've talking about Brady and Gretzky. I mean, listen, Connor Bedard hasn't even played a game as a pro yet. But man, the profile expectations for this young man are beyond anything we've seen since Connor McDavid. And it'll be interesting to see that game tonight. But I think a lot of this second half of the season, while we talk about the playoffs and who's going to be in, it's all about Connor Bedard too when you look at the bottom of the NHL standings.
That's incredible. Selling out the Saddledome for junior hockey when they have Flames hockey. They have Calgary Wranglers. They're now the hype for Connor Bedard. Off the charts. He's got Cam Robinson on Twitter tweeting out. He's got a 10-game goal streak where he's got 21 goals. Got a 34-game point streak where he's got 43 goals and 86 points. And that's how many games he's played. Just absolutely incredible season. I mean, his numbers are rivaling McDavid's junior numbers. I mean, again, incredible player, and this is why teams are really trying not to win, just to get as best chance. You're not guaranteed a first pick, Huss, but if you can even get a couple percentage points more, the impact that this guy could have on your NHL franchise, like next year or in the years going forward, you would have him, team control, whatever it is, 9 years or until or 7 years. I forget what it is. Anyways, just incredible. And yes, here it is in draft eligible seasons from Cam Robinson on Twitter. McDavid, 44 goals, 120 points in 47 games. That's 2.55 points per game. Bedard, 43 goals, 88 points in 35 games, 2.51 points per game. So, I mean, he's matching McDavid in terms of points per game here in his draft season. So
that's good.
This will be one of the most anticipated draft lotteries coming up since the Matthews Line A one. I think that was pretty anticipated.
Oh yeah,
and the McDavid one, of course.
Well, and the thing about this draft, we all just talk about Connor Bedard, but the depth of the draft of high-end draft prospects kind of puts this one maybe even beyond those. We've heard, was it Shane Malloy and a couple of the guys we had in and around the World Juniors said this could be the best draft in 10 or 15 years when you talk about the first round overall, which, of course, Remo, was a big concern of a lot of teams, including the Winnipeg Jets, that want to get aggressive at the trade deadline with making a move to trade a first-round pick. It also makes the first-round picks that much more valuable when it comes to if you're willing to use that as the draft capital as currency to add to your team. Teams that have first-round picks, I think, have maybe a better chance of making some real hay at the deadline. But again, it comes with a major risk because of what everyone is saying about the quality of the class of 2023.
Yeah, it should be quality. And just looking at the draft, we're going to bring up the draft lottery simulator more and more, Huss. There's Columbus right now, 25% chance. I think Florida, they're on a bit of a stretch. So Montreal's, they're got double the chances here, 7.5%, and Florida's 3%. So that's only 10. But Chicago, 13.5, Anaheim, 11.5. Arizona's in there too. San Jose, they're going to be making some deals at the deadline. And watch out for Vancouver. I think they realize, we got to put on the tank here. They traded Bo Horvat. Who else is going to get traded? They're like, we need to start losing some games fast to just get that much better of a chance. And any percent chance, I think, is worth it in this point. Normally, we're kind of anti-tanking. You want teams to try. But when you have a player like this available, just lose as many games as you can. And Anaheim, Chicago, Arizona are trying really hard to do that.
It is. What is it? 18.5% for the team that finishes last?
They have, well, the odds are, I guess that's a top three. It says one overall, 25.5% for the team that finishes last.
Okay, so 25.5. And what's second?
13.5. I don't know. Okay. Yeah, 13.5.
So there is a 12%. So being dead last is a big, you're almost doubling your chances of getting Bedard. Now it's still 25%. That means you got a 75% chance of being left holding the bag. And I always think about the tankathon that happened in the McDavid year. The thing with Buffalo doing what they did, and again, the rules have changed a couple of times since then, but it guaranteed them one of Connor McDavid or Jack Eichel. And Jack Eichel, obviously not Connor McDavid, but no, not a bad consolation prize if you didn't get the win. Now we've seen teams, it just guarantees you, I guess, in the top 4 picks. Now, listen, this year, as we've talked about, you're going to get a great player in the top 4, even if you're picking at 4. But if it's all about getting Connor Bedard, there's a far greater chance that you're going to be disappointed after the draft lottery than you'll be there singing the praises of the young phenom and making a plan. I did see Maul saying Bedard and Laine are going to look amazing together. I'd certainly be here for that. I'm sort of torn because, you do want a player like that to go to a market that he'll be appreciated, that, will make a big difference. I kind of think Columbus is that spot. The one place I don't want him to go, and I think most people would agree, is Arizona. I think it would be completely embarrassing for the National Hockey League if the most hyped prospect since McDavid comes in and basically moves from playing in front of 17,000 in the Western Hockey League to playing in front of 4,500 at Mullet Arena in the desert.
Yeah, I'm trying to think like where I would want him to go. I think Montreal, I mean, the media attention would be insane, as we've seen with, the attention with Pierre-Luc Dubois, who doesn't even play for them. I don't know. Anaheim would be kind of cool. I mean, it would be nice to be in California. Chicago, I don't want him to go to Chicago. So I'm not sure.
Yeah,
Vancouver, he's from Vancouver.
Chicago would be an amazing landing spot for him as far as the league goes. An original six team that has great history, has some recent success of cups, and presuming that Taves and Kane are moving on, that would be a clear delineation from that era to the next one. But selfishly, as a Jets fan, I don't want to see that guy in the division for the next little while. So hopefully somewhere in the East. I would love it. And again, the Ottawa Senators are probably not really going to be in the mix for that. But I mean, Ottawa, even Vancouver would be really cool. I mean, he's from that area. And certainly that would do more to rejuvenate the Canucks franchise than literally anything they could possibly do management-wise. But let us know in the chat. There's our why not question of the day. In the chat, assuming that the Winnipeg Jets are in the playoffs and the Jets have no shot at Bedard, where would you like to see him go? Hit us up in the chat. Shout out to our friends at Not AutoCorp down at Waverly and McGillivray.
Everyone in chat is like seeing my mouse hovered over Sim Lottery. They want me to hit it, so I'm just going to hit it
let's
before we
do
get
a
to
quick
Fink.
lottery. Let's see what's happening as of the All-Star break or just before.
Anaheim. I'd like to see him go to Anaheim. That's my pick.
Well, that is your pick. Okay, do it one more time for my pick. Who do we got?
Columbus.
Seabus.
There you go.
All right. Bedard and Laine. Bedard, Laine, and Johnny Hockey. They played hard last night. I liked their game last night. They ended up losing by one, but not too bad. All right, we will talk Jets, maybe a little bit more into Bedard and everything around the league, trade targets for the Jets. I know Brady's riding the Timo train in chat. I know many people are riding that one as well. It would be a great target for the Jets. We'll talk about that coming up with Billeck in a little bit, but we're going to get the latest on the Manitoba Moose, Fink, who's on the road with the club. Before we do that, folks, still chilly outside. Did your car start this morning? Was it? Well, listen, what you need to do is pop on over and see Donnie and his great staff at Manitoba Battery and make sure you are set for the depths of Manitoba winter. Before we get to talk about some of the more fun batteries for the toys in the summer, Manitoba Battery are the battery experts. You'll shop local, get the best price in town, and save time and money because the Manitoba Battery will also deliver that battery to you citywide in the city. As long as you order by 3 p.m., you'll have it by the end of the day. All you need to do is give them a call at Manitoba Battery or order online at manitobabattery.com. And as I mentioned, if you were, listen, if you think you might need a test, you're not sure, pop by 1026 Logan Avenue. They'll give you a quick free battery test and get you on your way, whether you need a new one or not. Hey, end of the month is here, but we're into February. We'll be announcing our unsung hero for Wallace & Wallace, along with Jets All-Star defenseman Josh Morrissey in the next few days. But a new month means new opportunities to submit that community hero, making a difference in the lives of others, whether it be through volunteerism, charity work, being active within, and spending so many of those extra hours putting on, youth sports programs and more. Let us know about that person in your life and why they're the unsung hero of their community. Send us an email, unsunghero@winnipegsportstalk.com. Wallace & Wallace will donate $500 in the name of the WST listener that nominated the unsung hero to the Dream Factory. And Josh and Margot Morrissey are going to match that for an even $1,000. And the unsung hero will receive props on WST and an autographed jersey from Josh Morrissey himself. I got to give a big shout out to the guys over at Consolidated Supply as well. Man, I'm looking forward to golf season, looking forward to getting outside. I know it seems a little far away right now, but it's not. And if you're planning some projects next year, whether it be landscaping, irrigation, artificial turf, putting in that dream outdoor kitchen in your backyard, or maybe installing a hot tub, Consolidated Supply has everything you need to be covered. You can check out their new website at cte.ca, but maybe the best way to do it and get the ideas going on what is possible for you is pop down and see Joe, Spicy, and the gang at Consolidated Supply. They are open to the public, 1395 Niagara Road East, or check out everything they've got going on at cte.ca online. And just before we bring in the Fink, of course, February is here. We're still kind of grinding through sixth season, and battling colds and sore throats has never been easier with Colflex Oregano Spray, made locally by Initech Nutrition. Colflex Oregano Spray helps relieve coughs and sore throats and helps to maintain immune function. Get yours today at any Vita Health location, along with great prices on natural and organic supplements, beauty products, and groceries. And when you shop at Vita Health, you'll be supporting a great local company, family-owned and operated since 1936, also carrying Winnipeg's largest assortment of local products, too. Vita Health Fresh Market, empowering people to lead healthy lives. 7 Winnipeg locations, including the newest store in Linden Ridge, and online at myvita.ca. All right, to the road we go. Dan Fink, voice of the Manitoba Moose, joins us now to catch up on what's going on with the herd. Fink, what's up? How are you, buddy?
Oh, doing pretty well. Just enjoying a nice day without practice here in Milwaukee, and looking forward to a couple more coming up against the Admirals.
Milwaukee, great town.
Absolutely fantastic
Great beer town. Good baseball town. A lot of cheese in Wisconsin. What does the broadcast team do on the off day in a town like Milwaukee, other than grace us with your presence on WST?
Well, just popped out for a spot of lunch with some of the support staff, and we think we'll maybe head over. There's a great barbecue place, Doc's Smokehouse, over by the rink. So I think we might stop over there with a great, whether it's they've got a good beverage list, we'll say, and then quite the supply of smoked meats and various delicacies. And I think we'll hit up the Bucks game tomorrow night. Clippers are in town for a late one, so that should be a lot of fun. Already got our tickets for that. So when you got a couple of days in Milwaukee, you gotta do all the, shall we say, Milwaukee things. And it should be a good week here. Man,
that's awesome. Well, of course, the team played last night in Rockford, getting ready for the weekend now against the Admirals. A 3-2 shootout loss. Obviously, it can go either way once you get to penalty shots. Fill us in on what went down last night.
Yeah, Moose didn't have their best game, but Arvid Holm was ridiculous last night. He made 43 saves on 45 shots, 17 of 18 in the second period alone. And at one point, from starting into the second period to about midway through the third, Moose were being outshot 28-9, I think the total was. They were able to kind of crawl or battle their way back in with a real strong final 5 minutes of the third period, where really it ended up being a little surprising that the Moose weren't able to win. I mean, they had about 4 or 5 glorious scoring chances in the final 90 seconds. Just couldn't get any puck luck. They had 2 trickle just wide of the post. They had 1 hit the post. On to overtime and go. The Moose had 6 shots on goal in overtime, including 2 clear-cut wide open looks for Jansen Harkins. Declan Chisholm was able to walk to the net. Christian Reichel had a chance on the back door, just couldn't get it over the pad of Arvid Soderblom. So the opportunities were there to win it. It was an absolutely electric overtime. 10 total shots between the two teams, but off to the shootout we went. And I'd have to give the edge to the Ice Hogs when it gets in the shootout. They have a cheat code over there in Lucas Reichel, Christian Reichel's cousin, first-round pick of Chicago, and he was able to cash in. So gave them the early lead. Moose weren't able to find their way past Soderblom, and that was all she wrote. So an entertaining hockey game. The Moose, I think, feeling the effects a bit of playing 3 games in 5 nights, plus a bit of a travel day in between there to get down to Rockford. And the Ice Hogs came in having lost 7 in a row. So we're playing some pretty desperate hockey and got a much needed win for the Ice Hogs. But all in all, I think the Moose, just with how the game went, probably happy to get a point that their goaltender may have stolen for them.
Yeah, and you did mention, the amount of hockey they played. 2 big games on the weekend. A Friday, Sunday, as opposed to the usual maybe Saturday, Sunday when the Jets are away. First of all, shout out to everyone behind the scenes at the Moose who put on a great event for Dancing Gabe. Would have been there. I was out of town, of course. Did appreciate the opportunity to give a message to Gabe at the game. And they got a win for the 60-year-old last night or on Sunday afternoon. What a cool event. And I mean, listen, he is the Winnipeg institution of sports fans. So credit to everyone at the Moose, and nice to see the boys get a win for Gabe on his birthday.
Yeah, it was interesting because that came up in the summer, and I think it was a no-brainer, but that goes on the schedule, and it comes down to, well, what do you actually end up doing for this? I mean, it's great that it's his birthday, and that's a starting point, but then where do we go from there? And Colin Peterson, his crew, did a great job of sourcing in a lot of those birthday messages that we saw, and Raquel Payne was working overtime to do a lot of interviews leading up to that and talking about what the day meant to us as an organization. And Gabe's family was fantastic, and of course it all just came together so well, and we couldn't have done it without everybody, including yourself, who submitted some of those messages. The folks were able to help us out with some old footage, things like that, and of course the man himself, who was gracious enough to spend his birthday with us, and seemed like he had a really good day. And that really, at the end of the day, that's the most important thing. So it was great that the fans really came out for it. Just shy of 5,000 people in the building, so it was exactly the atmosphere that you would hope to celebrate, like you said, a Winnipeg institution.
Well, and you know what? I mean, dating myself here, but of course, being with the club in the inaugural season, one of the first things that the Manitoba Moose did when they came and started off this new chapter of Moose hockey in the IHL was to basically make Gabe a permanent fixture with the jersey and a season pass. And man, I can't even imagine what the number of Moose games that Gabe has been at. But I mean, it would be the vast majority of every Manitoba Moose game played for over 25 years. I mean, what is it, 27 years? Obviously, there's a few years where the team wasn't here. And, you know, death taxes, as I said in the message, you know, players and coaches come and go, staff members come and go. He has been the Winnipeg institution, so it was really great to see him have that special day and have the great turnout that the team did. And obviously, a nice win for the club, too. Those games against the Marlies are always really tight between these two clubs. How would you say the rivalry between Toronto and Manitoba is?
It's maybe not as spicy this season as it has been in past years. I just don't know that either club is necessarily built that way, especially the Marlies. They're not exactly they'll play you hard, but not necessarily going to mix it up a whole ton. So it's not as spicy as it has been. But like you said, I mean, they're always pretty tight games, and we've seen some pretty good battles between the clubs already this season. I believe they've all been decided by a single goal. Obviously, we still have that last one to go still, but it's been a real tight series, and that's a top team in the North Division that the Moose have played extremely well, and we saw them play the Texas Stars very well the previous weekend, picking up 2 wins. So the Moose have faced some elite competition over the last little while, and they've been able to pick up some points in those games. And that certainly stacks up nicely when you start looking towards some of the playoff matchups that they might see if they are able to work their way in. So if you're going to end up playing those top teams, you better be able to play them. So the Moose have shown that they can, and that they can be competitive every night.
Well, and really important games right now. I mean, you look at the Western Conference standings, and, you know, the Moose look like they're in ninth, but then you look at their win percentage, they're actually ahead of 3 of those teams. The bottom line is it's incredibly close right now, and every single point very, very important for Manitoba.
Well, yeah, I mean, coming into last night's game, if the Moose had won, they would have jumped up to third. If they'd lost in regulation, they would have dropped to fifth, while the Ice Hogs would have jumped into a tie for third. And it's every night the standings flip around. Texas is kind of nestled there at the top pretty comfortably. Milwaukee is kind of watching nervously in the rearview mirror as teams duke it out. As Iowa got off to a slow start, but they've been fantastic of late. And Jesper Wallstedt, goaltender there, just won the goaltender of the month. He went like 6-0 at a 1.28 goals against average. So they've charged right back into the thick of things. And then the Moose have been just kind of hanging around and jumping back and forth. They've had some hot runs, some cold runs. The Ice Hogs got off to a slow start. They got real hot. Now they've been real cold. So nobody's really been able to establish them. And even though Texas has a bit of a lead, and you start to look at the win totals, and they're pretty much on par with everybody else, they've just been able to get to overtime more and get some of those points in extra time that they don't have a great record in overtime, but they've been able to pick up those points. We saw how relentless they can be against the Moose when they were in town, fighting their way back into a couple games. So getting that single point last night, obviously you want two, but certainly by no means is it a bad thing to be able to get that point on the road. Now, though, an opportunity as they take on Milwaukee. If you can win both those games, you're going to see yourself jump up the standings pretty nicely.
Yeah, two huge games for the Moose beginning on Friday night there in Milwaukee against the Admirals. Let's talk about Ville Heinola. Ville has had, he's been up and down this year with the Moose, with the Winnipeg Jets. Unfortunately for Ville and his situation, with as packed as the Jet blue line is, the fact that he's waivers exempt makes him the easiest player to be sent back to the American Hockey League, where he has played at such a high level. Doesn't seem like he's getting the up and down hurt him on the ice right now, Dan. 8-game point streak, Ville's 4th multi-point game of the season. How's he been since he came back this last stint from the Winnipeg Jets, and handling being back in the A? It certainly seems like he's getting the job done for Mark Morrison on the ice.
Yeah, I think it's important to note that Ville's not alone, right? I mean, there's plenty of guys that go through this every season in the American Hockey League where they end up in that year. And it's kind of a progression for some guys in their career where they're going to bounce back and forth. They're going to spend 10 games here, 10 games up. They're going to bounce back and forth. They're going to be in the press box a couple nights. And it could be a tough season for a player, but Ville seems to have handled it well with the Moose. And you know what? It used to be that you'd see him maybe take a few games to make that adjustment coming back to the American Hockey League, because it is a very different game, especially for defenders. Things are a little more organized up top. Your pass, you don't really have many bad passes in the NHL because the guys receiving them are always going to be able to get that onto their tape. Not necessarily as much the case in the American Hockey League. So it can take a little bit of adjustment, but it seems like lately he's been able to jump right in and contribute. And like you said, running an 8-game point streak now at the AHL level, longest of his career. He was able to contribute with a shorthanded goal, did a nice job jumping into the rush after Alex Limoges made a real good play back in the defensive zone to get that puck moving up ice, and just gave him a good target and managed to slip that puck 5 holes. So he's been picking up points. He's been contributing that way. He's been solid on the ice, and that's exactly what the Moose coaching staff's looking from him. Really does give Eric Dubois more options when he's looking at those matchups from his D-men.
You know what, Dan, you mentioned Alex Limoges, and we had a great chat with him a month or two ago. Really, really fun individual. He came here as a free agent, signed with the club, and has pretty much been the leading scorer on this Moose team for pretty much the entire season. Now just 1 point off point-a-game pace. Fill us in on Limoges for people that missed maybe the interview with him, and what he's brought to the organization, and how much he's being leaned on by Mark Morrison in offensive situations.
Yeah, certainly an interesting case for the Moose, because he was a guy that, like you said, signed as a free agent. He was on an AHL contract last season with San Diego, the last 2 seasons with San Diego, and had a real good year, scored 23 goals, was one of the top players offensively in the AHL, the final third of the season, something like that, but wasn't able to sign a deal there, or wasn't part of the picture in Anaheim. So got the opportunity here to sign with the Winnipeg Jets organization, and has been a real important addition for the Moose. Brings a lot of skill. He's a smart player. He wins his battles. He's not going to burn anybody with speed, but what he does do is uses his body to create positioning effectively, and makes up for maybe that lack of that top level speed with just how heady a player he is, and just knows where to be on the ice, and create so much in tight spaces. So he really has been a nice fit, and it's been a lot of fun to watch him work. And he has been hovering around that point per game mark pretty much all season. So he's dip below it, so he's probably due for a 3 or 4 point night coming up here in the next little bit, because that seems like what happens every time he gets below that mark. So it's been very impressive to watch him go. He's been an important leader for this Moose club, and here's a guy that's come with great offensive pedigree. I mean, he's, I believe, the all-time leader in points per game for Penn State, and certainly has a good following from there. So it's been a lot of fun to watch him work. He's meshed well with various different players, no matter who he's been asked to play with. So he's certainly been a very, very key cog for Manitoba on the offensive side of the puck.
Hey, Dan, at the end of last season, we saw a couple recent Jet draft picks join the club, and Daniel Torgerson and Henry Niekkonen. They're now getting their first full year in North America in the pros, and they played most of the games. I mean, what have you seen from those young men, and how their first full season's gone?
It's quite the adjustment for those guys, and I think it was real valuable that they were able to get over for a few games. Nikkanen even got in a playoff game as well, so they got to see what the ice was all about. They got to see kind of what the AHL game at the top level is. So you get that experience. They're able to go back home. They're able to get into the gym and work on their game on the ice when they can through the summer. They get back here, and it's not that easy to drop right back in, right? Daniel Torgerson had a pretty good run, scored a goal or 2 goals and had an assist in those 4 games that he played, came back, scored a goal in his first game of the season, and then it was a bit of a grind for him. So there's a lot of learning, and for those young players to deal with not only just a different ice surface, a different style of game, a new organization, they're getting used to living in a completely different country. Moving away, and they're still pretty young men, so moving a long way away from home, and that is a big adjustment. So they've been able to be solid players for the Moose. Like you said, they've been in most of the games. Henry Nikkanen has been relied upon in a lot of key situations to win faceoffs as a centerman, and that's tough. As a young guy in the league, there's a lot of savvy veterans out there, and when you're stepping into the faceoff dot against a guy like Logan Shaw in Toronto, you better be ready to bring it every night, because he will cave you in that faceoff dot, as we saw what he would do nightly for the Moose when he was a member of the team. So for Nikkanen to be relied upon in all those situations, he's a key penalty killer, usually one of the first guys over the wall for Eric Dubois' PK, which is one of the top in the league, working alongside Christian Reichel. He's been very reliable in that sense, and then he's been able to chip in offensively where he can. And for Torgerson, it was a bit of a grind. And here's a guy that has the big, heavy shot. He's got the big body, still learning to use that effectively in the style of game that we play here in North America. But of late, 3 goals now his last 5 games. He's been finding that touch around the net. He's been taking advantage of some opportunities, and he, along with Nikkanen and Nicholas Jones, seem to have found a little bit of chemistry and have provided a pretty good line for the Moose that have spent a lot of time in the offensive zone. So starting to come along for those guys, and it'll certainly be interesting to see in the second half of the season how that work is going to start to pay off for them, that they've been working with the coaches.
Getting the latest on the Moose on the road with Dan Fink, the play-by-play voice of the Manitoba Moose. Of course, you can hear all Dan's calls, cgob.com and moosehockey.com for the latest on the Moose. We've talked about Villy before. Of course, we had Declan Chisholm on when he was announced to the All-Star game on a couple weeks back. Leon Gavanka, another. I mean, they've got some real highly skilled, talented offensive defensemen. But T. Konopali will kill me if I don't bring up Tyrell Bauer, because this young man in his rookie season as a pro has definitely made an impact in the lineup and probably made an impact to a few domes on opposing players. Fill us in on this guy. If people have not seen Tyrell Bauer, what he has brought to the Manitoba Moose and how his rookie season's gone as a pro, Dan.
Yeah, I mean, the most notable thing probably about his season so far is that dance card that he has, and it's been punched by a few pretty big ticket, tough guys. When you look at the American Hockey League and even the NHL, I mean, Scott Sabrin is a guy who dropped the gloves with regularity in the National Hockey League, and all that happened when he got into it with Tyrell Bauer was Bauer started that fight on his knees with no helmet and managed to win the tilt. So when you're starting out like that against one of the notable tough guys in either league, that's pretty good. So you can see the videos online. He can certainly knows how to handle himself. But for Bauer, I mean, the most important thing is what happens the 98% at the time when you're out on the ice, and that is to be a reliable defensive defenseman. That's always been his game. That's how he's been advertised coming up through junior hockey and now into the AHL. And for him, it's about making those reads correctly. It's knowing where he needs to be and using his body effectively and picking his spots, because you can't always step up for that big hit, especially in pro, because one, the guys that you're going to try and step into are just as big as you are. And two, if you're not careful, they're going to dance right around you and go to the goal. So for Bauer, it's about effectively positioning himself and working with that coaching staff again to just process the game. And something that Eric Dubois always says about him, and Mark Morrison as well, is he loves to learn and he wants to learn. And coaches love that. And when you have a player who's willing to take that time and really put that in and hone their craft, that's certainly a very valuable skill on top of what happens on the ice.
Dan, of course, we've got these 2 back-to-back games, Friday and Saturday in Milwaukee. Then a break until Friday. What happens with is the All-Star game early next week? So
yeah, so
will the players, will you guys go back to the Peg or?
Yeah, so the team will travel back. Well, some of the team will travel back to Winnipeg on Sunday. The rest of them will go to parts unknown to take a few days off, some well-deserved break time, except for Declan Chisholm, who will be heading to Laval along with Nolan Baumgartner and Mike Keane for their various responsibilities for the All-Star Classic, and they'll have the skills competition on Sunday night and the All-Star game on the Monday night, and you can catch those. I believe they're on TSN and RDS, so that's going to be carried in Canada on their previous couple seasons. I think was on Sportsnet. This year it'll be on TSN, so you can see Declan Chisholm skating with the best the AHL has to offer those 2 nights, so that should be a lot of fun. Nolan Baumgartner is going to get inducted into the AHL Hall of Fame, which is cool. He's been waiting for that now for a little bit, and Mike Keane will be one of the honorary captains. I'm sure he won't be able to have a good time with that at all. Running around bringing his brand of chaos, I'm sure, to the dressing rooms there. So should be a lot of fun. But yeah, a little well-deserved break for the team otherwise, and then they'll get back to it in Grand Rapids, travel down there the day before. So it'll be a bit of a whirlwind, but you know what? I think that they'll all take it for that couple of days of rest.
Dan, great stuff. Enjoy the Greek Freak and the Bucks game tomorrow, and all that barbecue you're going to be hitting a little bit later on. Enjoy the day off in Milwaukee, great city, and looking forward to the calls on the weekend as the Moose try and finish strong heading into the All-Star break.
Yeah, we'll be on cjob.com/sports and AHL TV Friday night. That's a 7 o'clock puck drop. Pre-game coverage starts 15 minutes ahead of time. And then with the 6 o'clock puck drop on Saturday, we'll be on CJOB, the main station, as well. So you can catch us on terrestrial radio or in the usual digital format. So looking forward to it. Always a lot of fun when the Moose and Admirals get together. And we're talking about that Moose and Marlies rivalry, not necessarily being as spicy as it always has been. You want to talk about spicy rivalries. The Moose and Admirals have played each other a lot the last couple seasons, and they don't like each other very much as a result. So usually I'll get a real good time.
Some great history. I still think back of Bill Bowler's epic OT winner back in the old days, and both teams still going strong. Looking forward to it this weekend. Fink, thanks for doing this, buddy. Have a great one.
Thanks, us. Have a great day.
All right, there's Dan Fink, play-by-play voice of the Manitoba Moose. And again, cjob.com/sports. And again, Saturday night on the main station, 680. You know where to find him. Dan Fink with the play-by-play for all Moose. And by the way, does a great job greeting you if you call the True North offices on the phone. That, of course, is the dulcet tones of the voice of the Moose, Dan Fink. All right, Billeck's coming up next. We'll talk about Jets at the All-Star break, as well as some other big topics in and around the world of sports, I'm sure. Before we do that, I do have to remind you all that winter is here. There's still lots to do, though, in Winnipeg. We've got another month or so of the River Trail, and if you haven't tried it out yet because you don't have skates, head on down to Royal Sports. Listen, they've always been the hockey superstore in town, but they do have some affordable skates for just people that want to casually hit the ODR or skate on the River Trail that won't set you back as if you're buying a pair of skates to play in the National Hockey League. One of the great things about Royal is when you have the amount of space and inventory that they have, they really do have the right choice for anybody that's looking to strap the blades on. While you're there, you can check out the unparalleled selection of hockey equipment, sticks, and more, and the best selection of fan merchandise around, including thousands of pieces of Winnipeg Jets merch, including many exclusives, all the jersey options for you, tons of Blue Bomber gear, and your favorite NFL teams, NHL teams, Major League Baseball, NBA, and more. It's all there at Royal Sports. And don't forget that amazing Yeti section, too, if you're looking for some great Yeti merch. Follow them on Instagram at Royal Sports Pembina for the latest merchandise drops and sale information. And you can always find them at 750 Pembina Highway. Pop down and see them at Royal Sports. If you're thinking about upgrading the wardrobe now that we're into the new year, or looking ahead to summer with a number of big events, you know where to go, fellas. F Apparel, the place for the best deals on custom suits and clothing for men. 190 Smith Street downtown. They've got it all. The entire process is really easy, especially for the suits. You decide on your fabric, colors, styles. They'll measure you up, and a few months later, or a few weeks later, you've got a beautiful custom suit made to order for you at an amazing price. Custom suits beginning at $400. Chinos, golf pants, tucked and untucked shirts as well, custom made for you. You'll get exactly what you want. It'll fit great and look even better. And fellas, if you're in a wedding party, talk to Andrew and the gang about a great deal and big savings when your wedding party gets outfitted from F Apparel. And if you got a 2023 grad coming up in June, get a custom suit for the graduate at F Apparel, and they'll get a free custom shirt and tie. Savings of about $150. F Apparel at EPHapparel.com online. And, of course, 190 Smith Street downtown. And, hey, couple more games before the All-Star break officially begins. A great one tonight between the Boston Bruins and Toronto Maple Leafs. If you're thinking about a spot to get out, maybe have a couple schooners and watch the game, your local Boston Pizza is the place. Great daily specials. Obviously, the best spot in town to watch the game with the big game and big sound on the big screens. And while you're there, ice-cold schooners, the best wings in town, delicious pizzas, and more. And if you can't make it to your local BP, stay at home, stay warm, and order online at bostonpizza.com. All right, let's talk a little Jets at the All-Star break with Scott Billeck of the Winnipeg Sun, who joins us now. Billeck, what's up? How are you?
I'm good, man. You recovered from the weekend yet? That was a close one.
I have recovered. I'm still on a high though. And the funny thing was, as we kind of talk Jets here, I did find there's a great hockey bar in Kansas City called the Blue Line, and they've got the full center ice package. And we were out hitting a few spots, and we said, "Hey, let's hit the Blue Line and we'll be able to watch this hockey game tonight." And watch the Jet. And again, when you're watching it in a packed bar on a visiting team's feed without sound, it's not the best way. I mean, I didn't have any hot takes after the game, but I mean, I did see it and kind of saw the Jets wilt through that game, and then heard what our guy Bones had to say afterwards. Absolutely spitting fire, unlike I think anything we've seen at any point this season. So it was very interesting what we were going to see out of the Winnipeg Jets on Monday night. And in a game that I think everyone will remember for a long, long time, I thought the team played quite well. They carried the play. They had the majority of the chances, but you could just feel the tension in the building and around the club, even if you were watching on television, with the way that Jordan Binnington was stoning them. And in a capsule, if that was just one game, you'd think, hey, the team's playing well. But with everything that led up to that game, it really did seem like it was in some ways a bit of a real incredible test for the Winnipeg Jets. And man, we'll be referring to this one as the Morrissey game for a long time, Scott, because he stood up, put a team and a fan base on his back, and reminded them that it was time to get going after he scored. Interested in your thoughts on what happened in the third period on Monday and what that might do for the player and the team when the team gets back after the break.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the I haven't seen a celebration like that. I'm trying to think of like the last one, maybe the lid flip by Blake Wheeler. Like I'm really trying to think of one that sort of made a statement, right? Like, and that one made a statement. Like, you could see it was crazy because you're kind of watching it, and they showed Morrissey on the Jumbotron as he's coming by. So I don't know if it was on the TV first or not, but he's coming by and he's looking at the crowd and he does the let's effing go thing, right? And you could tell at that point. I mean, it's easy in hindsight now to say that, oh yeah, well obviously that pumped up the team, but like there was time that you could essentially hear a rat piss on cotton in there, right? Like it was so quiet at times. It was bad, and you're like, okay, well, and the Boo Birds after the second period were out again because, I mean, maybe unfairly because the Jets they had a lot of shots and Jordan Binnington was unreal in that game. Like some of the saves he made were
go 0 for 6 on the power play in that situation, and people will be anxious.
They will be, and especially given that you threw up 2 duds and probably your 2 worst games of the last few seasons, back to back essentially. And given all the context of the season, how good the Jets have been and where they are in the standings, there was a lot riding on last game. You could feel it in the room earlier. You talked to some guys who's like they wanted to win that game, and some of them I think needed it to remind themselves that that they are a good club, that they're a good team. And you listen to Mark Scheifele and that after the game, you could tell that this was weighing on that team, especially after what Rick Bowness said on Saturday after the game. I mean, those were incendiary comments, right? I mean, those were.
There's no wiggle room.
I mean, there wasn't, right? I mean, he didn't mince his words. He called out his best players. He took shots at his best players, essentially. And almost, the quote of the night to me was, I was surprised that there wasn't more booze, right? Essentially, is what he said.
Well, and Remis brought that up. Remis brought that up yesterday, and in some ways, like as I said, I got back from KC at the end of the first period, so I wasn't in the building, but I mean, I could hear it, and I was a little bit surprised considering the way the team was playing. But in some ways, Bowness almost challenged the fans to do that more, and I think maybe they took it a little bit further because that wasn't a performance that probably was boo-worthy, but it was more the overall situation that they found themselves in at that time.
Yeah, and exactly, and so I think when Josh Morrissey scored that goal, like you could almost feel like whatever you want to call it, the monkey off the back, the weight of the world off their shoulders. Like that goal was. It was a good goal. He streaks down the side, he rips one, goes in. They needed that goal, and it sparked their comeback, right? I mean, that's the thing. One of the thing was it was 40 seconds after I believe his name is and Alexandrov, Nikita Alexandrov from the Blues. It was 40 seconds after they made it 2-0, and his goal made it 2-0. And both of Winnipeg's goals they gave up in that game were just poor coverage, right? I mean, both of them were essentially breakaways. That 2-0 goal could have crippled the Jets early in the third there. And Morrissey didn't let it. I mean, you could see, though, Morrissey, especially on Saturday, he was frustrated. I mean, he was going after Flyers players, but I think that was more of a show of frustration just on the fact that, the way that it was going. I mean, this team has taken a lot of pride in what they've done this year and didn't. So that goal was huge. And then you see Scheifele score, and then Morrissey scored the game winner 21 seconds after Scheifele put one in. That place hasn't been that loud in a while, the Balharry Canada Life Center. So, yeah, I mean, they needed that win. And it wasn't a must-win game because, you can't say that. But I think it was for mentality. And going into that break, not on a 4-game losing streak for the first time this season, not with 11 days to stew about it. They played that game, even when they got down 2-0, they didn't get away from the structure in that game. And that was something that had kind of crumbled within them, underneath them in the previous 2 games and has a little bit over the last. I mean, they only won 2 of 7 after they won 8 of 9, right? So, the foundation stayed rock solid in that game. And as many saves as Jordan Binnington was making, they kept coming, and eventually it paid off. And again, they spoke about that, right? I mean, Rick Bowness talked about commitment being, you got to be committed. You got to pay the price, is what he said. They paid the price in that game on Monday. And yeah, you can say it's the Blues or whatever. It doesn't matter if the team was 16 points behind you or not. You had to win that game, especially, you already lost to 2 teams outside of the playoff line. You can't lose to a third one. And they didn't. And, it changes everything, right? I mean, we're talking about Josh Morrissey being this, stepping up. I wrote about him, basically being a captain without the C this year, the way that he's played, what he's led this team on and off the ice. The stories would have been completely different if they would have lost their 4th straight. And I think that, the fan sentiment, everything, right? I think it changed a lot of the narrative of this team. I don't think it erases how they've played because they have to fix some stuff, obviously, the way that they had played. But I think that showed that they can overcome, the adversity that they were facing. And that's a sign of a good team. I think that win said a lot about, answering the bell, dealing with the pressure of losing and being a good team and that sort of thing. So, I mean, they responded to Rick Bowness, which is, you want to see that. because a lot of the guys were pretty upset about it. I don't think Mark Scheifele was too pleased about being called out, but Mark Scheifele went out and did the right thing, and basically ate the words and came out and scored a big goal for the team.
And you know what? This isn't the first time. I mean,
no.
I think back, what was it, the second preseason game when he called out the shift length of the top guys, and the message was received. May not have loved it, but it worked. And sometimes this team, I think, needs a little bit of tough love, and I'm not sure it was always there at times in the past. And listen, you only have so many cards to play as a head coach. But it really did seem like that was the time for Rick Bowness to do that, to nip that in the bud. Because let's think back to some of the, like previous seasons under Paul Maurice. At the end of the season, the Jets get into that slump, and there wasn't anything like that. There wasn't a real challenging of the players. There wasn't a true acknowledgement of what was going on, and there wasn't that reaction. I mean, that run at the end of 2 seasons ago, I mean, there was that one win for Paul Stastny's 1,000th game, but that broke up a stretch of a time, and that sort of reminded me of what the trajectory of the team was, and they stopped it. And you're right. Was it a must-win for them? No, because they were going to have that break anyways. But, I mean, to go in, just for the mental state of all of those players, and the fan base, of course, I think was very crucial. But back to Morrissey for a minute. That was a call to arms for his team, but also for the crowd. And I mean, it was a true making a statement. It was like, let's effing go and come be with us. Don't turn on us. I know we haven't played that well, but and it was very interesting, his wording. When he said before about the booing, he said, well, at times we've deserved it. And I think the key part of that was at times. You can't just be reactionary and, things aren't going well and immediately turn to that. But it did speak to the situation that the team had been in for the last couple of games and the way that they had been playing. And you mentioned, we've talked a lot about potential new captains for the Winnipeg Jets. I think it's been evidently clear that Josh Morrissey has kind of been growing into that guy. But as I tweeted out and a lot of people were talking about it, I don't know if you really need to wait till September. I mean, if you have a plan to do it, go for it. But I think we're seeing right now the answer to the question that we've been asking all season long. 44 is going to have a C on his chest next year for the Winnipeg Jets, and he's acting and playing like one right now. And that moment, I guarantee you, Scott, whenever this happens, and I'm basically, I'm speaking as if it is a foregone conclusion because I believe it is. That game on Monday night, I guarantee, will be brought up at that conference and will be cited as a moment when Josh Morrissey removed all doubts as who a perfect leader for this team is going forward. And I think that's something that everyone in the dressing room, in the front office, and in the fan base can get behind.
Yeah, 100%. My argument would be Adam Lowry, and even then, I just think that, given that that Josh Morrissey's here for another, I think at least 5 years left on his contract. I believe it's 5 years. Everything that he's done for the community. And then this year, stepping up. Josh Morrissey has taken this whole season, from the first conversation that he had with Rick Bowness, the Norris talk, all that kind of stuff. He's taken it, right? He's taken his team on his back. And early on the season, when let's say Kyle Connor wasn't, he was struggling maybe to score or whatever, it was Josh Morrissey putting up all the points. He was leading the team up until what it was, game 37, I think, something like that, where he was leading the team in scoring. He's done everything that's been asked of him off the ice. He's the most requested guy this year. He's been in front of the mic more than anybody else on the team. So he's taken on that through the wins, through the losses. He handles all of that really well, like a captain does. And then on the ice, getting the crowd into it, all the little things, right? You watch Josh Morrissey on a daily basis, as I get to do, he sits in the room, he talks to whoever comes by. Does he want to all the time? No. And you could see that in the last couple of games. He'd still be there after practice, and you just walk up to him, talk whatever. I don't think he wanted to talk to anybody. I think he was just pissed off, right? I mean, he was upset, like any guy would be, given how they were playing. But he just carries himself in the way that you would want the captain of your team to do, and that's, between him and Adam Lowry. I mean, I see both of those guys. They could be contenders.
Well,
for that.
Lowry's interesting, and I'm with you. Like Lowry does all of those things as
right?
well. No, he doesn't. And to be honest with you, what Josh Morrissey did on Monday night, like Adam Lowry does not have that club in his bag. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, he's a guy that's always going to be there for his teammates. He's going to do the right thing. He plays hard. He does all the things that you want in a player. But, as a captain, there are unique times in the season where you have to step up and do exactly what we saw on Monday. And I think that's where most people would agree that Josh is the guy going forward. While we're on this topic, because it is. Like we are we're past the midway point of the season. The Jets have 30 games left, but it is sort of good delineation. I don't think anyone would doubt that Josh Morrissey has an A grade on his season so far.
Sure. Yeah.
How many other A's would you be giving out when you look at the Winnipeg Jets over the course of this season?
Probably two others. Connor Hellebuyck gets one. I think that's an easy one for me. He's also in the running for the MVP this season. I think Josh Morrissey would be up there too. In terms, I mean, it depends. Got a little closer
in my book after Monday.
Sure, 100%. I mean, recency bias will say, Josh Morrissey. But I mean, look at the season as a whole so far. Yeah. Connor Hellebuyck has stolen him quite a few games, and so that's depend again. It'll just depends on what people think on that. But Pierre-Luc Dubois. And all the noise, strip away all the noise, the fact that he may or may not want to be here. What a season Pierre-Luc Dubois has had. And maybe he hasn't had the best few games or whatever, but I'm still giving him an A. And because I think he has often at times been the guy that pulls his team into the fight as well. And he's just played really well. I mean, it's offensive, defensive, physical, all of those things. He's been right there. And so that would be probably it for me for A's. I mean, I put Mark Scheifele probably at a B+, just the turnaround. Maybe that's just because based on last year and all that. Mark Scheifele only hit 30 goals the other night there for just the third time in his career. I mean, if you were looking for someone to buy into, you needed someone to buy into a new coach, a new system. It was Mark Scheifele. I'd probably maybe put a B+ there. I mean, it's close to an A, maybe an A- for Scheifele as well. I think Kyle Connor's been good, but probably a B+. Everybody else on defense would fall short of that. I think, but if you're going to, it's Josh Morrissey with the A, Connor Hellebuyck arguably with an A+, probably an A. And definitely, I think in my mind, Pierre-Luc Dubois, because I think he brings it every night. And again, if he was signing here long term, and he already had, or if that was a kind of a foregone conclusion as well, he could probably be in the running for the captaincy as well. But I don't think. I think we're getting kind of to the point where you're kind of almost accepting what's going to happen with him. And then go from there. I think that's overplayed. I think that's overplayed, to be honest with you. I mean what has changed from last summer to now? A lot. It is, but also his value has gone up, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the other thing.
That doesn't change it at all, in my opinion.
I think the thing that always was there for him is you have this opportunity to have every team, fawning over you in a year and a half now. And are you going to turn that down? And I think.
Well, let me put this, because I realize it's easy to kind of just say, well, this is a done deal. He's gone. And listen, there is some evidence that would point that way. I'm certainly not discounting that by any stretch of the imagination. But how different is it that when Kyle Connor signed his extension? Or Ehlers, or the Jets have done an unbelievable job of signing players once they're here and keeping them here long term.
Yeah.
And listen, last year was a freaking disaster. I mean, anyone that thought that they were going to get something done on a long-term deal coming out of the mess that was last season, I think was kidding themselves. And all of the noise around what happened in Montreal and what his agent said certainly added so much gas on the fire. Listen, it was great for us. I mean, our biggest shows of the entire year were in the middle of the summer coming out of that. But I do think that, you're around there all the time. I mean, he's a big part of this team, loves being a teammate with these guys, and they're having a ton of success. I guess my point is there's still a lot of games to be played. There's a lot of things that can happen. And both for Dubois personally, for his situation, he can improve it. But listen, if this team can get into the playoffs and have a long run and he can have his best season ever, I think that we're in a very different situation at that point than we were at the end of last year. So I don't close the door on anything. Stranger things have happened. But I do believe, I definitely do believe that he's such an important asset that that's something you're going to have to vet pretty thoroughly at the end of this season and figure out where you're at. Because that's not an asset, considering what you gave up, that I think you'd feel too comfortable playing out the stretch and have it walk away for zip.
Yeah, no, he has to go in the summer if he's not going to sign, right? I mean, if it's going to arbitration and there's nothing that you can do, you got to trade him, because what are you going to do go into the season? And then what, if you have a good year, trade him at the trade deadline or get absolutely nothing for him? No, I don't see any of that happening. I mean, honestly, I see a sign and trade in the summer happening with Pierre-Luc Dubois, and that's probably what happens. Because, I think the best return that the Jets are going to get is offering other teams to be able to talk to them and find a deal that makes sense, and then let it happen. But yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, anything could happen. They could go on a long run. They could win. They could win the Stanley Cup and whatever. But I don't know. I guess I'm at a point where if you're going to sign here, what's the holdup at this point? I mean, I guess you wait, right? You wait to see how the season plays out, maximize your earning potential, all that stuff. I think the Jets would open up the checkbook right now, though. I don't think $10 million is out of the equation, right? Like I think they would sign him for $10 million and right now, and that would be it. I mean, I think if both sides wanted this done, it'd be done already. I mean, that's sort of my thing with. Well,
I'm just saying that I it's incomplete. Like, as I said, I mean, I think what happens the rest of this season, and both sides have a lot of time. I mean, there is no rush to do it. If he was sitting there going, yeah, by the way, this half season's gone great, I'm in, sign him. Well, yeah, for sure. And I mean, I'm by no means am I suggesting that. I just think that if we say, the ship has sailed and it's pretty much done, I think it's just an easy thing to say that's not really true at this point. I mean, I think there's still a lot of things that have to happen.
Right. There's just not a lot else to go on, right? I mean, we've gone on all the noise. We've gone on a lot of the I don't see a player who, I shouldn't say that. I mean, no, you're right. We'll figure it out. We'll find out in the summer.
Yeah, and I mean, listen, speaking of that $10 million ticket, if you're going to re-sign Connor Hellebuck, I mean, I think that's going to be a Carey Price contract, to be perfectly honest.
It has to be, right?
That is going to be there, and your ability to do both of those guys might be different. But to be honest, all of that, it's fun, conversation to talk about the offseason. The time is now for the Winnipeg Jets because of all of those things, which of course brings us to the trade deadline, which I think is going to be more interesting. Speaking of $10 million, $10 million qualifying offer.
He said be all right with 9.
I mean just the qualifying offer. Like if you want to keep this, like regardless of what happens on that. Yeah. So. But Meier is fascinating, and I know, I mean, listen, he is the top player on the market if you look at it. And I think the Jets absolutely have the assets to make that happen. If, from what we're reading, I mean, it's going to be a Bo Horvat type of return. Well, the Jets can do that. The Jets can absolutely do that.
Yeah.
And if that happens, I think that shows a clear indication that it is about this year and this year only right now. And I think that's the only way Kevin Cheveldayoff can act. To Timo Meier is obviously at the top of the list. I mean, if you're putting your GM hat on right now and looking ahead to the next 4 weeks, and it starts with Timo Meier, what is next? If you get Meier, does that preclude you from doing many other things right now? Who are the other players of real interest to you, Scott, that you think we'll be talking about a lot in the next 3 to 4 weeks before the rubber hits the road on the 3rd?
Yeah, well, I mean, let's get the easy one out of the way. Jonathan Taves, right? I mean, we talked about him last time I was on. I think it's a move that would make sense in terms of that. I still question, how much it impacts the club, just all the noise that would be around that for the first little bit. But I think it's the right, I think that would really solidify kind of that third line going into the playoffs. You could even play Adam Lowry out on the wing or whatever you would do. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to look at that one. So that one, that's the easy one. It makes sense. He's a hometown kid, all that kind of stuff. I was talking with Ken Wiebe up in the press box the other day. You threw out the name Ivan Barbashev, who was here the other night. It was St. Louis. I do like that idea too. A gritty guy, third line guy.
He scored 26 last year. Ken, I'll give him credit. He's been pumping the tires of Barbashev as a potential ad for most of this season.
Right. And there's history between the Blues and the Jets in terms of trade deadline stuff too, right? And if the Blues are going to be in sell mode, maybe you're looking at him. What about Ryan O'Reilly, right? I mean, if you're looking for a rental player, Ryan O'Reilly. I mean, that could be a great move. Guy with Stanley Cup experience. Same with Barbashev, right? But Ryan O'Reilly, I mean, you want face-off wins?
He won the
Rick
Conn
Bowness
Smythe.
loves it. Exactly. And Rick himself in essentially everything, right? So I like that idea. What about Travis Konechny in Philadelphia? What's Philadelphia doing, right? This name has been thrown out a lot before. I like Konechny. I like Konechny as much as I like Meier. I like actually Konechny better in some cases because he's a year younger. His contract's still better than Meier's. It'll be a lot when he has to resign, but I believe he has another year left on his deal, or maybe 2 years for Konechny on that deal. So I like a guy like Travis Konechny if you can make that work. So, it's people. What happens with the Islanders if they don't make it? I mean, I know they went and got Bo Horvat, but what happens if that doesn't change around? What about a guy like Gabriel Pajot over there? I mean, he's that kind of guy too that could be a good fit for this team.
Well, the funniest thing is I totally agree with you on Pajot, and he's an interesting, versatile player who could do it. But considering what Lou just did 2 days ago, I'm not sure. Like, what do you think about that deal?
Well,
I mean, what an aggressive move for a team that's got maybe a 20% chance of making the playoffs. The more I think about this since they made it, I think they got this done to see whether they could come to an agreement on a deal over the course of these next 3 weeks. And if things go even further south for the Islanders and it doesn't look like they're going to have any clarity on that, I could see Bo Horvat getting traded again at the deadline, to be honest.
Which would be hilarious, right? You're right. I think that
it would be hilarious if they got a way better package than Vancouver did with what they traded.
So that's my problem with this deal is like, what is Vancouver doing? Like, I mean, first of all, Jim Rutherford or whoever was it, Alvin, who came out and said we got 3 first-round picks, and then realized that Ratu, I think his name is actually pronounced Ratu, even though it looks like Ratty.
Yeah.
It was a second-round pick.
He fell into the second, but he was a player that he was like a Brad Lambert type, basically.
Sure. Yeah. Brad Lambert still win in the first round, though. So, but yeah, anyways, my whole thing is like, why pull the trigger now if you're Vancouver? Like, I guess you're worried that he gets hurt and then that's it. But like, are people like, he was the number one name on every trade board, right? Given the season that he's having, unbelievable year. Do you not wait a little bit longer to see if you can get a better return, right? I mean, I don't know. I mean, they like it. They got a first round pick, obviously top 12 protected there in this year because nobody's giving unprotected picks in this year's draft. But going back to the Islanders, yeah, I mean, I think it's hilarious, to think that they could trade him if they can't figure it out. I think that deal was done though, having some sense that this is probably where he would sign long term. I think Bo Horvat's the type of guy. I do believe what he says that he would have signed long term in Vancouver. He didn't want to leave. You're the captain of the team, and I think he took pride in that there. But yeah, it could be possible. And then what's Lou going to do? I mean, are you going to rebuild there? You have some good pieces. That's the thing. It's a weird one. You just signed Barzal. Barzal's got a big ticket that he'll walk into next year with his, I think it's 9.5 he's making, something like that. But I like Pajot. I like the type of player he is. I liked him when he was in Ottawa. I think he would be a good ad. And so, I have Pajot, Barbashev, because Kenny convinced me of it. I like Ryan O'Reilly, Taves, but I really like Timo Meier. And if the Jets are in it, and there's been some talk that, they are, I like Timo Meier more of a long-term guy, like a guy that you would do a sign and trade with San Jose, bring him in, pay whatever the price is. They're going to want picks and they're going to want probably a Villy, maybe a Brad Lambert. What about a Chaz Lucius? I mean, this is the price of doing business in this league. But if you're trying to extend your window for the next couple of years, and you think, and I mean, the Jets will have a better idea than we would about what's going to happen with Pierre-Luc Dubois. I've talked to some guys in the analytics community. Can the Jets have two wingers like an Ehlers or a Connor and a Meier, and then play an average center in the middle on the second line of success? And the analytics people think that is possible. So if you look at that, I mean, would Timo Meier soften the blow of losing Pierre-Luc Dubois if the Jets know that's kind of the road that this is? There's other things you can do if that doesn't. I mean, if Pierre-Luc Dubois signs and you sign Timo Meier to a big ticket, yeah, I mean, you're going to lose Blake Wheeler in a year. Maybe you do something at the end of this season to kind of, figure out how to, lose that money for next season. But at this point, I like the Jets. I think they have to look at the top, right? You have to look at a Meier, because if that's what you're doing, if you believe this team, and I think the West is wide open, and I think we both agree on that. I mean, you look at the West.
I'm not sure it's ever been more wide open.
Exactly. And the way that the Jets were playing and losing there, nobody really set themselves apart, right? It wasn't like Vegas went off. Seattle's been playing really well.
Vegas,
I get that. But
remember the start of the year?
No, I know.
Vegas started 13-2.
Yeah.
Vegas right now. So they were 11 games. They were 11 games above 500 at the beginning of through the first 15 games. They're at that exact same spot right now, 29-18 so far. They've basically been a 500 NHL 500 team since game 15 of the regular season. And yes, injuries have had something to do with that.
Yeah.
But I mean, you're right. The Kraken are the first place team in the Pacific, and full credit to what Hack's doing there and what they've done. I mean, to me, the team to beat is still the Colorado Avalanche. And they've got, they're fourth place right now in the Central Division in a wild card spot.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what to think of the Colorado Avalanche. I really don't. I mean, it's weird. They've also been decimated by injuries.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. That's the thing. If they're getting Gabe Landeskog back for the playoffs, and they can add at the trade deadline because Landeskog's, not going to have his cap hit there, so they can add and because they're an LTIR IR right now. I think that team is one of those teams. It'd be like in LA if they kind of sort of sneak into it or whatever happens there. I still think they'll be great and good to go for the playoffs, battle tested, all that stuff. But yeah, I mean, the Jets have also shown they can beat Colorado this season. Injured, not injured. The Jets were also injured. The one time the Jets were still dealing with some injuries themselves when they walked into Colorado there and beat them. So I like the stage is set for this season to be that year, right? Like this is the year that I don't know if there could be a better setting for Kevin Cheveldayoff to go for it. And so what does go foring mean? I think go foring is taking the grand slam swing, not just, trying to get a signal and drive a run in from second. You're trying to do the walk off here, right? And I think
4 bases, 4 rounds. Exactly. You got to go for the cycle. You know what?
You do. And so, I mean, it starts at taking a big swing at a guy like Timo Meier, right? I mean, I think that's where it starts. But it doesn't end there either. I mean, because I think you want to, so you get Timo Meier, he goes straight into your top 6, of course. but then you still want a Johnny Taves or somebody like that to get your bottom six kind of, or your middle six, let's say, kind of solidified going to the playoffs. And then what else do you want? Do you want Luke Shen? I mean, I think Luke Shen's available. Do you want a gritty kind of big defenseman like Luke Shen that is going to be a guy? Well, exactly. And I think that's what it is, right? Because what's the biggest question mark on this team on the defense all season has been that sixth defenseman. Well, you get a guy like Luke Shen or somebody like that, a guy who's been around the block, big, durable, gritty, that sort of thing. That's what they want for that six. And if Logan Stanley's not going to run with it and Dylan Sandberg's not going to run with it, well, you don't have to have them run with it, right? I mean, get another guy in there that's going to do that. And then you have Sandberg and Stanley as like the 7-8, and if somebody gets injured or whatever, that is. I think this is a year where you have the cap space to do it. You have the team to kind of entice guys to come, the rentals. And then you can take a huge swing and try and get like a Meyer, or in my opinion, a Konechny, somebody like that, and try and pry one of those guys off of these two teams that are, Philly might be looking to sell as well. And so if you're looking to do that, trying to get younger, whatever, I think the door is shut on Ivan Provorov for obvious reasons around here. So I think for the Jets, yeah, I mean, this is the year. It's the year to try it, right? I mean, I don't think you have to sell the farm to do it. I think you're going to have to pay a price. Well, but listen, I don't think the Jets come out of here with
if you're
nothing,
getting
right?
Taves and Timo Meyer and somebody on the blue line, I hate to say it, but we will be selling the farm.
Well, you're selling the farm, but I don't think you're getting rid of all your prospects, right? I mean, I don't think you're getting I don't think everybody's gone.
No, and certainly there'll be plenty of picks that would be
because I don't think Taves is what they're start talking. Right, and it's a second and third for Taves. I don't think Luke Shen would cost that much. The Meyer one is the one that you're like, okay, this is going to hurt when you look at it, but what are you getting in return? And if you get a guy on a long-term extension in that, I mean, that's a big thing.
And who knows whether that extension happens or not, but the bottom line is you do have the option of qualifying him,
right?
And then trading his rights to somewhere else that he would be happy to sign with long-term, and end up getting something back. It is a fascinating scenario. Scotty, enjoy a few days away from the rink, man. Thanks for doing this, and we'll catch up next week as the Jets get ready to get back at it with a 9 p.m.er on Saturday night. Guaranteed. Drunkest crowd of the entire season with all that time to parlay. Hopefully it'll be a little louder than it was for the first couple periods of that Blues game on Monday night. Thanks for doing this, dude.
Yeah, anytime, man.
Good stuff. There's Scott Billeck of the Winnipeg Sun. Good stuff. We are going to talk some football. Davis Sanchez coming up in just a second. Of course, the Scotties are right around the corner, and I know a number of people were asking what's up, whether we'll be doing. Well, we certainly will hopefully get, one particular skip on in Jennifer Jones. Of course, Team Jones, proudly sponsored by our great friends and sponsors at Princess Auto, the leaders in our community, supporting the Bombers, Gold Eyes, and our top curling teams, including Reed Carruthers and Jennifer Jones. And Princess Auto is also where you'll find the best deals on the most unique assortment of tools and equipment around. Everything you need to complete the projects on your list or start something new is at Princess Auto. 2 Winnipeg locations, Panet Road, Portage Avenue West. If you want to visit inside, and of course you can shop online and get those wheels turning on your next project 24/7, 365 at princessauto.com. If you have needs in the water game, you know who to go to. The experts at Culligan Water, family owned for over 65 years here in Winnipeg, have been the go-to people for all things water, going on 7 decades now. They've got it all: water softeners, filters, bottled water coolers, whole home systems, and drinking water systems, not to mention citywide water delivery services and commercial and industrial water products and solutions. Pop down and see the folks at Culligan in person, 1200 Sargent Avenue. You can give them a call at 694-5180 or check out everything that Culligan can do for you and your family online at drinkculligan.com. And a big cheers to our friends at Canadian Club for their support of Winnipeg Sports Talk. Well, we're now into February, counting down to CFL free agency, the draft, and then, of course, this season, unfinished business for the Bombers. And just the thought of it being nice outside and being back at IG Fields is a pretty nice thought, not to mention having a CC and ginger or a CC and rye and Coke in your hand at a Bomber game right now. In the meantime, pop down and get the great taste of Canadian Club and all the Beam Suntory products at your local Manitoba liquor marts. All right, lots of hockey talk already, but the huge news today, Tom Brady's retirement. And still getting over those, one dud and one incredible conference championship game and the Super Bowl matchup. And who better to chop that up with than former three-time Grey Cup champ, former NFLer, and TSN football analyst Davis Sanchez. Jess, what's going on?
What's happening? All those guys didn't have as good of a weekend as you did. I was stuck in a dark studio and you were tailgating, drinking beers, and celebrating, I assume.
That is exactly correct. It was a hell of a trip, and man, what a game! And we'll get to those in a minute. I'm very interested in your thoughts on what happened on Sunday and a look ahead to the Super Bowl. But let's start with the huge news today. Tom Brady hits the socials and drops a very brief 1-minute video saying that's it, he is done. What did you think when you saw it?
Yeah, I saw it come across. I got an email. It's funny. I got an email from like one of our stats guys with all of Brady's lifetime achievements, and I just kind of ignored it because he sends us stuff every day with updated stats and stuff. So I ignored it. But I did think for a second, like, what is that? Why is he sending me this right now? Anyway, and then I see on Twitter about half an hour later. So I knew a half hour before, and then didn't not before anyone else did, but. Anyway, yeah, I mean, look, it's hard for guys as great as Tom is to know when to say when. You know, it's very rare that people retire on top, and Tom's definitely not retiring on top. He had a down year, but he's still, we're going to remember Tom as the great Tom, and he's not, he was far from a shell of himself. I think him still being close to, the top echelon of quarterbacks kind of is a really good thing, because I was hoping he wasn't going to go somewhere else, because he's just been so great that it's nice to see him be able to walk away and not see him a shell of himself. And that's it for me. He's my last guy, by the way. Last guy in the NFL that I played against in the league was I had Drew and Tom remaining. Drew shut it down, was a teammate, obviously, and Tom. So that's it for me. Now I'm officially an old shit.
The thing that surprised me about seeing that video today when I woke up this morning was like everything that he went through personally off the field to come back last year, and the disappointment that was the Buccaneers in the 2022 season. And the fact that he'd said all along he wasn't planning on hanging him up. It does seem like, I mean, this season is still fresh, and I'm not sure whether it was watching the level that the 4 remaining teams were playing out on the weekend or what. But when you look around the league, Ches, especially a team that played on Sunday, I couldn't help but think that the San Francisco 49ers, with all of that talent, and Brock Purdy, who's going to be out for 6 months, might be a perfect spot for a little swan song for a California kid. I mean, it would have been a hell of a spot to land in. And listen, this guy's about winning. We all know that. And that would have been a chance to win. And listen, I take him for his word. I mean, he certainly seems sincere. But I do have to wonder in the back of my head that if a glorious opportunity like that comes up, maybe later on in the offseason, if maybe we're doing this all again in a year.
Like, do you think that he had the conversation with the 49ers brass to see if he was interested? Because you're right. It seems like an obvious fit. But Trey Lance is their guy. It wasn't about Brock Purdy anyway. Really, it was about Trey Lance, I would think. Do you think Tom would have had the conversation with? I would have thought I would think he had that conversation. Yeah,
listen, I mean, I think John Lynch probably would have, had some speaks with him at some point. I mean, the thing about Trey Lance is, and it is such a fascinating scenario. They have done so well, literally, in every aspect of building that team. And they gave up so much to get Lance. And Lance was underwhelming, and then he was hurt. and he's a huge question mark. I mean, we've heard going into the NFC Championship game that regardless of what happened, Purdy was the guy going forward for the 49ers, and now this injury throws everything up in the air. Like with the talent,
but going forward that week and the rest of the playoffs, not next season. Like there's no way that I think the Brock Purdy story was cool and great, but I think we're kind of overhyping what he did with that offense, with those weapons. And there's a lot of guys I think that could do what he did, and not to diminish what he did, but I think talent-wise and ceiling-wise, I think you would agree that, but at least you'd hope that Trey Lance could bring something really special to that Shanahan offense that I don't think Brock Purdy can.
Well, there's a reason why they traded all those picks to get him at number 3, and why Brock Purdy was Mr. Irrelevant, the final pick of the 7th round. All that being said, I don't know if they can really trust either of those young quarterbacks, and the time is now for the 49ers. And it'll be fascinating to see what they do at that position, whether they get at least a veteran to come in and compete with Trey Lance. Because last year, of course, it was going to be Lance, but they still had Jimmy G. And they've been able to win with Jimmy G, even when they didn't think he was playing well. I mean, hell, in the NFC Championship game last year, he threw the ball 8 times. And yet they find ways to win.
Baker Mayfield.
Baker's story this year was fascinating because, we all know he got cut loose by Cleveland. He went to Carolina, flamed out there. And then, the way he resuscitated his career, or at least his image somewhat in LA, was, it was great to see. He's going to get another chance.
I would take him in San Francisco. I mean him for San Francisco as a guy that goes in and is the backup. I don't think you can let him compete because then now you have a controversy. But if you say Trey's a starter, Baker's our backup, knowing dang well that you don't know what you're getting from Trey, you get a pretty good or pretty talented backup at least that I wouldn't mind seeing in that offense. But for some reason, I'm one of the only ones that continuously backs Baker Mayfield. I don't know. There's something about him that I like, probably because he's 5'11" and looks like he's doesn't look like an NFL player, and he's pretty darn good.
Yeah, he's a funny dude because we still kind of think of him as this underdog with a chip on his shoulder. He was the number 1 overall pick in the draft.
Right. I know.
This is not a Mr. Irrelevant, but he certainly does that. And I'll say this. I have major questions as to the future of Matt Stafford, though. And I think Baker has found that he had a little bit of success on a team with a brilliant offensive coach. And, he needs to be in a spot where he'll have the opportunity to play and have the opportunity to succeed. And I'm not sure there's a better spot than where he is right now with the Rams if Stafford is still a big question mark. With Brady moving on, that'll be the huge story for the next couple days. But, of course, we're getting ready for the Super Bowl. We've just come out of, one complete dud of a championship game and one classic in a lot of ways. But while we're talking about the Niners, we may as well get to that NFC game. It didn't matter. Christian McCaffrey, we were at a tent at Arrowhead, and they had the TVs up, and we're watching this game. Eagles are up 7-0. And that run that McCaffrey had, it was like, this guy's going to will this team to win, or at least to stay in it on his own. But then the bottom fell out when you've got, Josh Johnson playing quarterback, getting hurt, Purdy going back in. It does bring up some questions about maybe changing the rules of having a third quarterback, because that was embarrassing for the National Football League to essentially have the game over at halftime. But credit where credit is due. This Eagles team has been a juggernaut all season long. A lot of people will look at their schedule and will look at their path to the Super Bowl and say, who have they really beat? But they've beaten everyone in their way. I mean, the Niners, great team. Obviously, it wasn't their day. But what do you take away from the Eagles' path and the way they throttled a very good team and put up a lot of points against a world-class defense?
Yeah. I mean, like, I'm one of those people that would say who have they played and who have they beaten. But you're right. They beat everyone that they put on a schedule, they put in front of them. And even that, like, the Chiefs had a much tougher schedule and a much tougher conference, obviously, a much tougher path to get where they are now. And even with all that, the Eagles are better almost everywhere. They're better offensive line, defensive line, better defense, better run game. They're better everywhere. Better receivers everywhere except for one position. Obviously, that's quarterback. And in a game like this, the pressure that's going to be on Jalen Hurts' shoulders is immense. And that's the whole reason that this – look at the line. I mean, the line this game, I haven't heard one person in the last 48 hours that I listened to or talked to or respect. I can't say I haven't heard one person, but very few, if any, that think that the Eagles aren't a huge favorite right now. Yet the line is not moving over 2. Like if everyone thinks the Eagles are a much better team, why can't that line get to 3? It doesn't make any sense, except for we all know that in a game like this, so much is on the quarterback's shoulders. I can tell you 100 reasons why the Eagles are a better team and why they should win this game. But Jalen Hurts didn't look great last week. His stat line was okay, but he didn't look great. And you got Patrick Mahomes, maybe arguably the best to ever do it, or at least the most talented to ever do it.
I'll ride with you on that, on both of those, from a Chiefs perspective. Yeah. The Mahomes performance on Sunday. I mean, you as a former player know what it's like playing with an injury, especially at that position, the high ankle sprain, what he was able to do with his arm basically on one leg, running. I mean, I watched every game this guy's played since he's come into the league, and there have been games that have been more spectacular, more high-flying. I think this was the game, though, that put a stamp on him as a true all-time great. I mean, you were sitting there at the TSN studios watching the whole thing. What did you think about the performance of Mahomes and how he, in a lot of ways, willed his team to win along with a defense that stepped up when they absolutely needed it, which was the full 60 minutes? Yeah,
just greatness, right? I mean, look, when you have an injury like that, and just to watch it, as a Chiefs fan, you follow the Chiefs much more close than I do and closer than I do. But I would say the greatness in him, the fact that the injury was that serious for him, rarely saw him. You would see him wince for a second, and as he winces, like he's looking at Andy Reid to get the play call. He's getting the formations. He's just so dialed in. And then sit in the pocket. I said this after the game. You know, when you're sitting in the pocket and there's, you got a pass rush coming at you, you have to keep your eyes downfield. Got to be. I've never done it, I'm not a quarterback, but it's got to be a pretty scary thing. Imagine being on one leg without the ability to move or protect yourself. And he stood in the pocket time and time again and made those throws. Like if he's making throws outside the pocket on the run, okay, that's impressive, but he's just fighting through pain. What was more impressive is when he sat in there in the pocket on one leg to the very last second and getting the ball out, especially that the MVS, the Scantling touchdown was amazing because it was a cover one robber where the safety is going to rob the first inside route. He knew it. They ran some little bit of cheese right in front of the safety's face to get him to come down. He had to sit in there and hold the ball for that second window to open up for Scantling, but he did it. And it's closing in around him. He's waiting. He knows he has to hold on for one more second, and then he kind of hops and throws the ball. He's the ultimate competitor, and I've heard people, Michael Jordan and Tiger Woods, and you don't want to throw those things out lightly, but the gamer that Patrick Mahomes is, I'm willing to put his name up in there with those guys.
Well, I mean, my boy Nick Wright referring to the AFC Championship game as the Arrowhead Invitational. I mean, 5 years in a row. It really is incredible. And if they
Arrowhead Invitational, I like that.
If they can get this win, then you're talking about them in the pantheon of the great teams. But there still is one more game, and we'll find out next week how healthy some of these players are. But Davis, the other thing that was incredible sitting there in that stadium watching what happened in the second half was that Mahomes was doing it without Juju Smith-Schuster, without McCole Hardman, without Kadarius Toney. Hell, he was thrown to a guy that had 4 career catches and 24 career tackles. I mean, pulling dudes off the special teams unit to go in and run routes in the fourth quarter of the AFC Championship. Yeah. I mean, there was a lot of adversity going against them, and the fact that they got it done. What did you make of the Bengals, though? The Bengals season, the way they came into the game with so much bluster and bravado. I mean, we all love it in the media and as fans. I mean, I'll take all the shit talk, all day long. But, man, it was pretty clear that really did resonate within that Kansas City locker room. And as much as it was great for media, I don't think they did themselves any favors.
Yeah, so like I said, you follow this team. Were you surprised by the reaction after the game with Kelsey, with Mahomes, just how much that seemed to impact them? I'm not a believer that I don't think that in an AFC championship, any championship game or even playoff game in professional sport, there's nothing you can say that's going to make me play harder. So I think it's all BS that bulletin board material and we were all fired up because of it. I don't buy it because there's nothing you can do to. I'm one game away from the Super Bowl. You calling it Burrowhead's not going to make me tackle you harder. Like, I'm going to do everything I can and study every second I can. So it doesn't change shit for me. The question I have is, were you surprised because of how much they talked about it afterwards? So maybe I mean, for guys as accomplished as the Chiefs are and Kelsey Mahomes and how many times they've been there, the fact that they were so wound up about that after the game shocked me a bit.
Well, it was a personal. I think they all took it personally. And listen, if it was just some other team doing that, like if it was the Jags the week before, it would have been no big deal. But this is the Bengals. This is the team that they blew it against in that same field, in that same game the year before, and then lost to them earlier this season. And they do believe that they are the best. They believe that they have set the standard as the number one team, certainly in the AFC in the National Football League. And when a team comes in running their mouth with the results to back it up in the past,
right.
I do think it was a little bit different. And listen, whatever you can do to bring the best out of everyone in that locker room, you lean on it. And I have no idea what the coaching staff did, if they really leaned on that. But there were a lot of guys that took that personally. And I'll tell you what, if I'm Joe Burrow, I love the fact that I've got the support, but let's maybe wait till we actually go and win the thing before we crown ourselves, because that's a lot what happened. And the funniest thing is, it's not Joe Burrow flapping his gums. It's Eli Apple. It's some of the guys that are on the periphery. And anyways, that was really interesting, but it was damn clear that some of these guys took that personally after the game.
Weight off their, the more you say that, the more I start to think more than a chip on their shoulder, maybe a weight off their shoulder, the Chiefs. If they lose that game, that's a legacy defining game for the Chiefs. They've done it all already. They won Super Bowl. They've been in, like you say, what, five in a row?
5 in a row.
AFC championships. But if they lose, now all of a sudden they're just a team that can't get it done. And that's gonna sit with them for definitely the next till next season and probably after that. So as much as it pissed them off or gave them motivation, the more you say that and discuss it, the more it makes me think it's actually pretty big weight lifted off their shoulders in a, not just for this year, but just legacy for some potential Hall of Fame guys Hall of Fame guys in Kelsey and Mahomes.
You know what? Listen, I'm glad you mentioned Kelsey because the quarterbacks always get most of the glory, but Kelsey has been a huge part of everything that this Chiefs team has done over the course of this incredible run. I mean, you've played, you've been in those huddles, you've been in those defensive meetings. I mean, what if you're a coach, if you're with the Eagles right now going into the game, I mean, what are you saying to your players about 87 in red and what you have to do to not necessarily stop him, but limit him from killing you?
Yeah, he's the one. That's it. Like you said it, he's the one. I mean, you have to. I was seeing spots, and you could double team him, and it doesn't really matter. He's still getting open. Like I was seeing spots in the second half of the season where guys would actually bracket him like you would like a guy on the punt team, the gunner on the punt team, like have a guy on one outside shoulder, other guy on the other outside shoulder, and they actually just jam him on the line with two guys. I think the Chargers were doing it, but I mean that's not even a double team. It's like a full. Don't pay attention to anything else in the field, but jam the crap out of this guy in the line of scrimmage, and we're going to do it with two of you guys. Like, he's a handful, and now with the injuries and where they go for secondary help. I mean, from the receiving core, I think we saw some good stuff from Scantling. Obviously, that probably makes you happy because that's a real weapon now because he is talented. If Mecole Hardman gets back, that's a big help because he's a burner, but.
Well, Kadarius Toney too. I mean, we really haven't seen him at full strength, and he was always injured with the Giants, and got hurt in that game. But man, when he's 100% and they're able to get the ball in his hands,
you don't trust him though, do you? Because I don't trust him in a big spot.
Listen, I mean, we saw he had a great opportunity for a touchdown, wasn't able to make the catch, and then was in
fumbled
street
a punt
close.
return the week before. I think he fumbled a punt return the week before.
Yeah, it's high risk reward when we're
Right.
talking about Kadarius Toney, but certainly has all world talent.
Yeah.
One more for you. I mean, we talked about the personnel on both sides, but I am interested, Davis, in your thoughts on the coaching matchup. You got Nick Sirianni here in his first Super Bowl with a great start to his coaching career. And then you've got Andy, who has been here, has won it, has been in probably as many championship games as anyone, maybe outside of Bill Belichick in NFL history. Is the experience of Andy Reid a huge advantage? Or does Nick Sirianni brought the best out of his football team? And, the coaching matchup, as far as, scheming will be important. But when it comes to everything around it and the amount of times Andy's been, does that matter to you?
So I'll ask this question. This will give you my answer. Who's played in more AFC championship games, Zach Taylor as a head coach or Andy Reid?
Andy Reid.
Well, Zach Taylor outcoached Andy Reid last week by a pretty heavy margin, I think. That's not – look, Andy Reid is great. Now, he might be the greatest. He's up there within the greatest coaches of all time, right? We're talking about what he's done.
For
I think
sure.
he's the only one that's won. What has he been 5 times with 2 organizations? Or
Yeah.
I saw some stat. Anyway, he's Andy Reid, but these young, sharp coaches like Zach Taylor. Like I think Zach Taylor out schemed Andy this week, and I trust in Sirianni that he'll be fine in this situation. He's young, he's smart, he's got a young staff that's pretty good. The only help I would say is experience and how to prepare your team and the week. We know the weeks, like it's how you get your team ramped up, scheduling, bus, hotel, media, all that type of stuff that Andy and his staff have been through so many times together, where Nick Sirianni and his staff have not. That'd be the only advantage, not X's and O's, at least in my opinion. You?
Yeah. I do think that the experience, because listen, as much as they've done a lot of winning, he's also lost a lot of ways, and you often become better by learning lessons the hard way. And Nick Sirianni hasn't done that yet. And listen, obviously, I'm thinking optimistically on the Kansas City side of things. I mean, I think Andy will, be able to bring the best out of his team and do all that. To be honest, and you talk about the, Zach Taylor and Reid, in a lot of ways, those guys were going against the defensive coordinators on the other side. And I mean, Spagnuolo had a monster game and listen, brought out the best. And listen, the game that Chris Jones and Frank Clark had, we're not talking about the Chiefs in the Super Bowl if those guys don't play the way that they did. Ches, before we go, I know you're going to be very busy getting ready next week for the Super Bowl. Do you have an early lean on the game right now? I know you'll kind of lock things in next week, and there's a lot more information to find out once the teams start practicing. But spreads around 1.5, 2 right now. I mean, what's the early lean from the TSN Edge expert?
Yeah, the early lean is actually a perfect play for you, and I talked about this morning. And it's if you like the Chiefs at all, if you're leaning Chiefs, which I'm sure you are. I like the value in that first half line. Right now, you're getting +1, or +0.5, whatever, any plus on Chiefs first half. As we know, if it's going to be a close game, we assume. Now, if it's a tie, that's a win, and a game that's going to be close like this, an extra possession is massive. So I don't like the spread right now, and I don't know what all we'll see. I'll be out there all week and see if anything comes up. But to me, I love that first half. If I want to put a bet in an early lean, the first half getting a point or a half a point with the Chiefs, you're in pretty good position. And I don't know how long that lasts for, but it's there now.
Well, we'll have lots of time to talk about it, getting ready for kickoff a week Sunday. Ches, it's so much fun watching you do your thing, and especially for those of us that like to sprinkle on things, what you're doing on TSN. Have an awesome Super Bowl week. Enjoy the game, and let's do this again soon. Good luck with the wagers.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me. Enjoy. Good luck.
All right, great stuff. Great stuff with Ches. Man, he's just turned into just an analyst and a hell of a fun guy to talk about. And yeah, I saw your comments in the chat. Do I need to remind you folks that Patrick Mahomes has been a starting quarterback for 5 years in the National Football League? He has been to 5 AFC championship games, is now going to his 3rd Super Bowl, and has the career passer rating record in the NFL, the playoff passer rating, total yards in a season by a quarterback, passing touchdowns and total touchdowns in the playoffs. I could go on. There has never been a career in NFL history that started like Patrick Mahomes, and he is the bar right now for quarterbacks in the NFL. And that's why the Chiefs are where they are. And listen, I know that there's going to be haters. Hey, I was a Brady hater when he was the best all along because he kept on beating my teams and making me miserable. And that's sort of the way things are right now with Kansas City. All that being said, though, it is a team game, and Mahomes might be the best player on the planet. However, there's a very compelling argument that the Philadelphia Eagles are the best team, the most complete team, and as Davis Sanchez just rolled out, probably have a positional advantage in most other aspects of the game. So it's going to be an amazing Super Bowl. And, MC Stormy, I mean, it's a Chiefs fan. Like, I don't know if you just became a Chiefs fan, but he's got 1 ring already, and I'm hoping in 2 weeks there'll be another addition to that jewelry box. Anyways, we'll have lots of Super Bowl coverage coming up next week on Winnipeg Sports Talk as we get ready for the game, and a perfect time to do it is the Jets will be off as they get closer to the bid. Listen, Remo, before you get you want to talk on this?
I was just going to say, for people on the podcast, you were responding to people in chat saying that Mahomes, they were laughing and unfollowing us when you said that he was the greatest of all time. It got a lot of response, and I was like, Huss, you can't be driving everyone away with this Mahomes loving, and then you had to defend yourself. MC Stormy saying Mahomes can't be the best if he hasn't won a Super Bowl, and everyone in chat jumped on him.
You almost got a lifetime ban by comparing him to Trent Dilfer.
I think that was T-Will it's Troll Will. I think that's what the T stands for. So don't take anything he says too seriously.
I take this personally, never mind seriously.
Yeah.
This is my guy. Anyways, great stuff with Davis. Got to give a big shout out to our friends at the Nick and Nicky DQ. I know it's a little chilly outside, but it's always a good time for one of those amazing stack burgers, chicken fingers, fries, all their great tasty treats, not to mention the amazing ice cream treats. And hey, if we can be the Slurpee capital, you know you're good for a blizzard 12 months a year. And hey, if you've got a party or an event coming up that you think a DQ ice cream or blizzard cake would be great for, hit them up on Instagram at DQ Manitoba. They'll custom make it for you however you want it, and you can pick it up quick and easy at any of the 4 Nick and Nicky DQs: DQ Niverville, DQ Northgate, DQ Polo Park, and DQ St. Anne's. And a big shout out as well to our friends at Little Brown Jug for their great support of Winnipeg Sports Talk. Don't forget, save the date, March 29th. Just a couple weeks into our 3rd year of WST, after our big anniversary on the 8th, is going to be the 2nd ever WST Sports Trivia Night at Little Brown Jug. We'll let you know about ticket information so you can reserve a spot. Probably right into February, beginning of March. But everyone that came out the first time, I think, had a great time, and we'll be looking forward to it again. The curation of the questions has already begun. So again, folks, pop that into the calendar, March 29th, save the date. Of course, if you haven't been to Little Brown Jug, you'll also be able to pop down and check out all their amazing beers. Nowhere better to do that than the brewery and tap room on William Avenue, where we'll be having the event. But you can also grab the new Good Times Variety Pack, $19.19, and all your favorite Little Brown Jug offerings at anywhere that sells great beer. Full citywide delivery as well online at littlebrownjug.ca. All right, we have a couple more things to get to before we finish up, but let's quickly hit the Coolbet Lines. New episode of the Lock Shop's out today. Dusty came through with a nice winner last week in the golf with Max Homa at, I think, 22-1. We've got our Pebble Beach picks out today, a couple picks for tonight's games in the National Hockey League as well. 2 games, Carolina at Buffalo. Man, I was kicking myself. I was out at the bar last night watching all 3 games at the same time. Shout out to any bar that has NHL center ice. Puts you above everywhere else. And I actually thought about putting down a live bet at the end of the second period on the Hurricanes, who were down 4-1 to the Kings. I got involved in a conversation, forgot. Next thing you know, I turn around, it's 4-2, 4-3, 4-4, and the Canes won in an OT. They're in Buffalo, though, to take on the Sabres tonight. Sabres considering traveling back-to-back for the Hurricanes. I think this is a nice spot for the home dogs. Plus 119 for Buffalo. And, man, a great matchup to teams you love to hate. The Boston Bruins and the Toronto Maple Leafs. Downtown TO, Leafs plus 107 on the money line. And the Bruins, who for the first time all season long have lost 3 in a row, minus 125 favorites. And a quick update on that Super Bowl line. It was 1 yesterday at Coolbet. It's now 1.5 in favor of the Philadelphia Eagles. And if you are riding with the Chiefs, might be a good time to get in on the money line. Even money on the Chiefs to win, plus 100. Eagles to win, minus 118. Tons of props available already. And Remo, man, I had to laugh. We were talking about this today with Dusty on the Lock Shop. They've got the Pro Bowl options right now. Now, there's the dodgeball, passing, lightning round, the longest drive champion, and all of those bets you can go AFC versus NFC. But the precision passing for the 6 quarterbacks that are in the game, I mean, it just speaks to where the Pro Bowl is and how insignificant it is, to be perfectly honest. Geno Smith, your favorite, at plus 325. Kirk Cousins and Trevor Lawrence at plus 350. Derek Carr and Jared Goff at plus 375. And Tyler Huntley of the Baltimore Ravens, 5-1 after playing, 4 games this season?
These guys are the Pro Bowl quarterbacks?
These are the Pro Bowl quarterbacks.
Oh,
well, of course,
God.
Josh Allen was named to the Pro Bowl and was supposed to be there. He's cut out. He won't be able to be there because he's playing at Pebble Beach in the Pro-Am, which shows you even world-class athletes can somehow get out of work to go play golf. Anyways,
that's a good line.
Pro Bowl.
You just come up with that one? I like that.
yeah, Pro Bowl odds and all that are up there. And I think that Skills actually is Thursday night. So anyways, looking for something to put a little sprinkle down on. There'll be something over the next couple days. Use the promo code WST over at Coolbet if you haven't before. And make sure, if you're watching on YouTube or listening on the podcast, get on over to YouTube at Lock Shop Bets. Make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel and retweet our pinned tweet over at Lock Shop Bets, because we're approaching 600 subscribers. We have $1,000 cash sitting in cash in 50s waiting to give out to one of our first 1,000 subscribers when that happens. So make sure you get in the mix for that. And we'll be back on Friday with another episode heading into the weekend. A little bit of a slower week, but tons of Super Bowl coverage next week on the Lock Shop. All right, Remo, before we go, big milestone today. The 30th anniversary of NHL Commissioners Gary Bettman's reign on top of the best hockey league in the world.
Yeah, I can't believe 30 years. That's a long time. So congratulations to him. And there's been a lot of looking back on his tenure as a not general manager, as commissioner of the NHL. There's definitely been some ups as bringing a team back to Winnipeg and getting that done very quickly. That's the up, and there's some downs
like Gary Bettman City right here, Winnipeg, Manitoba.
There's some downs like removing a team from Winnipeg and moving them to Phoenix. Oh yeah, and a couple work stoppages as well. But I want to mention I really enjoyed Sean McIndoe's article or column, whatever you want to call it. I always get confused. In The Athletic, Gary Bettman's 30 years. Don't judge him on what he's done, but what could have been. Basically, what he's saying is, hey, you look at, he'll come out and say, NHL record revenues are the highest it's ever been. Well, we got all these broadcast deals. Well, across sports, it's all the same. All the same. NFL broadcast revenues high, all revenues high. NBA, every league is the same thing. You do wonder though if there's some missed opportunities, whether it's TV deals or growing the game. What do people say? Marketing your stars more. Is it the playoff format, or trying to create more exciting games with the 3-point system rather than this loser point where teams play for a tie?
I hate that. I will definitely get on that one. As you know, that's my number one pet peeve and number one thing I would change if I was in charge.
And this is coming at the same time as there was an article, or it was reported that NHL viewership on TNT is down from last season, which leads to everyone wonder why and speculate on that. So I'll give a shout out to Sean because I thought this was pretty fair, pointing out the good and the bad. So congratulations to Gary Bettman on 30 years. I think he'll always. He got cheered here. I remember when he walked into the room on the first Jets game. It was maybe the loudest cheer he's ever gotten.
Bettman has done, I think, a really good job. I was asked today on the Rod Peterson show to give Bettman a grade for his 30 years. And I'm in the B. I'm in the B range, the B plus. Obviously, I have skin in the game because if it wasn't for the commissioner, working towards bringing a team back here, I probably would be doing something else somewhere else right now.
I never thought about that.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
so
shit.
Big Gary Bettman show here. But listen, this is a North American sport and a sport that was so far behind everything else. And listen, is it still far behind the other major sports? Certainly football and basketball, yeah. But there's a lot of things that go into that. I don't think there's any question when you look at a 32-team National Hockey League and the footprints that this sport has in areas that the sport was completely off the map before Gary Bettman was around. They've done a good job at growing the game. Will hockey in North America ever be like competing with the NFL and the NBA? Probably not. And listen, for all the people that say, oh, they don't promote their stars yet. We all know Kobe and Giannis and stuff. Dude, that is what basketball is, literally a star-based team. One or two players makes all the difference. Hockey is a team game. And listen, I don't think you can blame the commissioner of the NHL for the way stars have been marketed. In a lot of ways, that goes to the teams, and it goes to the culture of hockey that has been, for years and decades, been about not putting one player over the other, and that's part of what makes it the ultimate team game. So, listen, I know everyone can take their shots or nitpick, but overall, I think the NHL is in a pretty good place. And the one thing that people don't ever remember or acknowledge is that Bettman might be the figurehead, and he might take the boos on the podium, and and he can handle it. Gary Bettman has bosses, 32 of them, the owners of the National Hockey League. So if you've got issues with some of the decisions that have been made, keep in mind this isn't just been a one-man fiefdom calling all the shots. Every National Hockey League team has input into it. And that's a big reason why some of the decisions that have been made. The biggest ones you hear, the whining that comes out of places like the Toronto media about the salary cap and how it's so tough to make trades and all that. Listen, I get it, and it would be nice if there was maybe some wriggle room so there could be some more player movement. Listen, talk to the PA. You want more player movement? Have no trade clauses in contracts. Have shorter contracts. You could do all that. You think the PA is signing up for that? Hell no. So it is what it is. I still think the league's in a really good spot. And most importantly, the changes that have come under Gary Bettman's watch to make the game, the product, better. And I will argue that the game has never been better. Certainly the talent of the players, the product that we get each and every night. And they did make some drastic changes. Frankly, just started calling the rules, but we know who was calling the shots before. We're sort of hockey guys. It was the great equalizer. I think they've done a good job on that. So all in all, a definite passing grade. B plus for, it's B, but it's an extra plus because of the Jets are back in Winnipeg.
Yeah, I think we're kind of biased here. I'm seeing some people talking about the glow puck, and I will say the glow puck was amazing, and they should bring it back.
Ahead of its time.
I think it would. I think that would actually improve the ratings. The reason why the ratings are down is because of the board ads, because it actually hurts your eyes to watch hockey in 2023.
Hey, speaking of the glow puck, I meant to mention this to you. So I'm at that bar in KC on the weekend watching the game, and we were watching the Philly broadcast, which is NBC Sports Philadelphia.
Yeah.
And listen, I know Philly's a huge city and they've got a lot more money, but my God, the difference in quality of the broadcast. And again, I wasn't listening with sound. So, I mean, this has nothing to do with the commentators or anything else. It's just the visual presentation of what we get compared to that. The local Flyers broadcast was incredible. I mean, they've got a panel, a beautiful set in between periods. And speaking of the glow puck, they were screwing around. Like, it wasn't on all the time, but there were times where they had a trail line ripping around for passes and for shots. Actually, I shouldn't say on the shots because I didn't see it. It wasn't like the old one where the faster it got, the trail would change to red, which was obviously very cool. But they're working on some things. And again, it would be great if it was just an option, you could have on. I mean, I think that should be readily available in the future as to whether you want it or not. But I'm with you. I think that there could be some more things that could really, make the game a little more watchable, especially for newcomers. But I think a lot of people, myself included, wouldn't mind having that option to watch games as well, even though I know it's always been one way and we're fine with it the way that it is. It always can be better. And those options for fans, I think, would be great to see going forward.
When you talk about the Philly broadcast, you're talking about just the picture quality, the camera angles, or the fact that they had a pregame show with a panel,
all of the above,
and an intermission show. Well, watch any U.S. regional broadcast, they all have a pregame show with a panel. They all have an intermission show with a separate host and panel, and a real postgame show. And we don't have that on ours. Our game ends.
Listen, TSN cheaps out big time on the Jets broadcast. I mean, when it is really apparent is when the Jets played the Leafs, and you see what we're getting here in this market, and then you see the resources and the people, the brilliant minds they've got on that Leafs panel. And listen, it sometimes does make you feel like a bit of a second-class citizen or a hockey fan when it comes to what our team gets. Bottom line is, though, we got a team, and the most important thing is what's happening on the ice. And so far, been a great season. Despite last week, everyone feeling a hell of a lot better about the Jets and our plight going into the All-Star break after the heroics in the third period on Monday night against the Blues.
Yeah, a couple other things. We got 2 games tonight. This was a topic as well as far as declining ratings. We had 3 games yesterday. They all started at the same time, 6 p.m. We have 2 games tonight. They both start at the same time, 6:30. What are we doing here, Huss? Can't we have some staggered start times? Like, why do they have to start at the same time? People want to watch both games, flip back and forth. This is silliness.
Well, I mean, every team in particular time zones, teams set their own start times.
No,
the NHL is going to start saying, now, listen, I know
we have a 9 p.m. here.
We have a 9 p.m.
local
game.
start. We have a 9 p.m. local start. So they clearly don't care about local in certain
It is a Saturday night game, and that is a very rare occurrence. And sometimes the teams to get on national television will be worth it. Well, none of those games were national last night. So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, sometimes I think people are just finding things to complain about, and that is one of them.
It's so annoying when there's 2 games on. You want to flip back and forth, and they're both at intermission at the same time. It's dumb. That's my thought.
Get a little bit of break to go take care of whatever you have to do, and then you can get back and watch all the games at once. As I said, simple solution to this: multiple TVs, go to a spot that has them all, and there will be maybe a little bit of overlap, but there's so much that goes into, and you have to think about the fans in those markets. Randomly changing game start times 15, 20 minutes one way or the other just so that intermissions don't line up. I'm not sure that that's worth the inconveniencing of the fans and the operation that happened in the local market.
Say game starts at 7:15. Well, anyways, they tell you the game starts at 7 and they don't drop the puck till 7:10 anyways. So I don't know. Like,
Eastern time zones. If anything, plan games so you got one in the East and one in the West. I mean, that I'm here for. Get a Central Division. I mean, obviously there's 3 time zones in the league.
I'm just saying there's 2 games on tonight. Why are they both starting at 6:30? Why not have one at 6?
Because they're both in the Eastern time zone, and that's what time those teams start their games.
They start at 6. Games start at 6 every day. You can't start one game at 6 and one game at 6:30 tonight?
You can. And listen, they do that for the playoffs. But I mean, for the regular
season. You got a game in Toronto and the game in Buffalo. You don't think Buffalo and Toronto routinely play 6 p.m. Central, 7 Eastern games? Like, why aren't they at different times?
Why are they at different times?
No, why aren't they? Why are they both? Because one's TNT and one's sports. I guess for TV, each country picks their own game. That's dumb.
Yeah, exactly. So,
anyways, that's what Sportsnet plays games at 7 p.m. every other day, or 7 Eastern, 6 Central.
Huge, far, far bigger fish to fry.
No.
But again, is this a big deal, or is Remis just complaining for the sake of complaining? Let us know in the chat.
Yeah, let us. I think it's dumb. But whatever. What do I know?
WSTOT time zone talk with Chris Vermette. That was
we can end it with something fun. There's an NHL alumni game in Florida for the All-Star game, and the names on these rosters. Oh man, let me pull them up.
Okay, while you pull those up, there is some bad news to report. Andrew Brunette got popped for a DUI last night in South Florida. Not a very nice return to where he was the head coach last year for the Panthers, and not a great way to start off the All-Star break for a guy that has obviously had a pretty wild last couple of years.
Yeah, I always get sad when anyone gets a DUI, but when you see these guys, they obviously have a lot of money. Being a coach, and you can't call an Uber on your phone. Like, it's easier than ever, to get a car service. And there's no reason for that. So that's really sad to see. Hopefully, I don't know what's going to happen with Andrew Brunette, but yeah, there was news that he got a DUI, and you're just like, be smarter than that.
No, absolutely. And I don't know the details. I just saw that it run out that he's been charged with DUI, and they had a mugshot. But you just hope that that indiscretion didn't result in any people being harmed. And again, what happens with his career and a suspension, or whether he'll be with the team going forward, I guess that will all remain to be reseen. Okay, hit these. We were way late. Hit these.
We're way late. Lined up for some fun. Okay, so here's this Panthers alumni versus Jets versus NHL alumni. Classic names here. Panthers alumni. David Booth, Brian Boyle, Thomas Fleischman, Bill Lindsay, we've had on the show, Luongo, Brian McCabe, Ray Shepard, Rhett Warner.
Dennis Schvidvicki.
Okay, Wojtek Wolski, Peter Worrell, Keith Yandel. This is the NHL alumni team. Trevor Daley, Darius Kasparaitis, Patrick Marleau, who might even still be able to play in the NHL, Alexei Ponikarovsky, former Jet, Tuomo Ruutu, Pierre Turgeon. They're just some legendary names.
Eric
I just wanted to throw this
actually
out.
Married a girl from Winnipeg, Chelsea. He used to know her from around our area. Absolute stunner. And they've got a beautiful young family. So that's great. Pierre Turgeon as well. And Henrik Samuelsson. No, it should be good. When is that game?
I think that's tonight. I guess they have a big week. And the All-Star game, they have so many festivities there. And I don't think this is going to be televised or anything. But hey, if I was in Florida and I was a hockey fan, I would definitely check this out.
Yeah, no doubt. I'm, as I said, I was maybe going to go do that if the AFC game was in Atlanta, kind of continue on there. But, of course, I was freezing my butt off in KC, and that was the case. All right, we got to get out of here. Hey, Ice, excuse me. Big game for the Ice tonight at home. They're hosting the Saskatoon Blades. So if you're looking for something to do tonight, head on down to Max Bell. Should be a good one. And Ice heading on the road to Brandon and Saskatoon on the weekend, before coming back for home games next Wednesday, Thursday, Saturday, and Wednesday. That's going to do it for us. Shout out to Davis Sanchez. Great stuff with him. Dan Fink with the Moose. And, of course, Scott Billeck on your Winnipeg Jets. Thanks to all the sponsors that make the show happen each and every day, and all of you for making us a part of yours. Have a great one. We'll see you tomorrow on WST.
Oh, my God! Oh! Shut it down! Let's go home!
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.